Hey, if you're coming in from the shorts and wondering what this anime looking How to Train Your Dragon thing is, skip to this timestamp on screen now, or go to the last chapter of the video. But if you'd like to stick around, which I'll greatly appreciate, this is a video looking at every single How to Train Your Dragon game. How to Train Your Dragon is a franchise that released in 2010, and of course there's been a bunch of spin-off, comics, books, and games. So, today is currently the 29th of October. Every day for the next 7 days, I think, I'm going to be playing every single How to Train Your Dragon game, in order of roughly when they're released. Some of them may get a little bit jumbled. This is a ranking video, so after every review, we're going to be putting it into a nice little tier list for your easy viewing pleasure and my suffering. Because, oh boy, some of these games were much longer than I was expecting, and I got it stuck in my head that I need to complete it within a day. Uh-oh. Also, I'm going to be upfront with you immediately. This video was a complete mess to make, hence with the obvious mic quality difference as well. Please bear with, but it is worth it. I have a couple of questions I want answered in this video. What is the best game? What makes it the best game? And what elements could we combine to make the ultimate How to Train Your Dragon experience? I'll give you a hint. It's not Candy Crush. And I'm going to be starting off with the first How to Train Your Dragon game. How to Train Your Dragon, the game. This one released alongside the film. A bit weird. And excuse my hair. My hair, I don't know what's going on with my hair today. This game was very interesting. It's definitely not on brand to the franchise nowadays. I'm assuming this is a result of the creators wasn't too sure where the franchise would go in the future. So retrospectively, there are some questionable branding choices here, which is the main part of the game, beating up other dragons. No. Oh, ow!
I'm just getting started. Back left. Attack!
Smack it up. Ooh. It's a fighting arcade-like game, along the same lines of like Mortal Kombat or Pokken Tournament. One of those games is infinitely more recognisable. But through my 14 hours of gameplay, I've never really found many issues. My hand just hurt afterwards. It feels like 90% of the gameplay is just grinding to the appropriate level for the next tournament. Oh right, I should probably explain the progression of the game. It's fairly simple. You unlock your first dragon, learn the basics and do some training to unlock more combos, enter tournament 1, once you win that then you can go get another dragon to add to the roster, and then grind to level them up. You need to build a bridge to the wild zone where you can get more resources. You go on a fetch quest to grab some tools. You get the tools from Stoic and Gobber and Fish Legs for some reason, and then you can enter. This is a place where you can get access to even more resources and some of the extra content, which I'll explain later. You have to collect some materials for Gobber's proper meal. Tournament 2. Oh no, the stable doors were left open and the dragons flew away. Loyal my bloody ass. Get third dragon. Oh no, the dragons are sick. Get resources to revive them. Train the party. Tournament 3. Get the last dragon. Snotlout stole the horn, which is the thing that announces all the tournaments. Find it. Blow it, and train. Tournament 4. To find out information about Snotlout's new dragon, you need to get a scale of the beast, which dissolves into speaking to this guy and wrangling up the chickens. Though before you step into the last tournament, I suggest doing a bunch of minigames to level up your dragons. You'll be fighting against all the riders one last time, and Snotlout brings a grapple grounder. Ooh, it's cool to see an exclusive dragon here. I feel like this dragon was made for this game. Though I'm not too sure what was the initial inspiration of this dragon. It wasn't in the Book of Dragons in the film, nor mentioned in any other side media. My best guess is that they took this statue of a dragon being impaled with a sword in the Great Hall, though I'm glad they expanded upon it and included it in all the other games. But once you beat Snotlout for the last time, the game is done. EA, congratulations. There is a slight post-game. You can go to this bloke that stole your dragons and fight him like 17 times. Your team levels up more, but there's no real point. There's no other tournaments. And you can't redo the last one for fun, which is very silly. Just infinite gameplay loop. It was fairly fun as a post-game thing, just straight solid fighting. But beating this twat unlocks the legendary dragons in the arcane mode. which is a set of pre-designed dragons that you can use in this mode. This aspect has the most replayability and the thing that kind of works with the co-op. This was for the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii. And technically the DS.
Psst.
Huh?
It's a different game.
And within that time era, local co-op was more of a staple in the gaming industry. And honestly, if you play this mode with your mates, you could probably have a pretty good time. Again, if you like this sort of game. But yeah, you pick your dragons, you pick the stage to fight. You can do bots if you have no friends, like me. And this is the only way you could play as the grapple grounder, which is a little bit disappointing. I never really got a chance to use it properly. There's all new sets as well, or at least what I can see. You can fight in the village and some waterfall and that. Perhaps there were some side quests where you could do some extra fighting in these different locations, but again, I didn't do them. They're bloody boring. There are some extra mechanics and details which I severely overlooked whilst going over the plot, which we can get into the nitty-gritty now. There's the training academy / arena. This is where you unlock new combos and earn XP, also get some customizations. Of course, in games like these, there's going to be some unbalancing issues, and I think I found a combo with a certain dragon which I used because it's very cheesy. Because I don't really like these genre games and I just wanted to get through it, I definitely abused it. I'm so sorry. Though a little lore tidbit when you enter this cave, it suggests that the Vikings have used this area to train dragons for generations, which is inconsistent to the lore of the films. Now obviously this game is non-canon, but it is kind of interesting. It sounds like this is more based on the draft of the movie that was closer to the original book, where Vikings have already been training dragons for generations. But as you know, in the movie, Hiccup's the one who first decides to train dragons. Also, we're introduced to an event which this whole game is based around, Thor's Day Thursday. It's an event that originated in the books, but now it's officially a part of this universe. Ish. Again, the game isn't canon, but I like to take these little tidbits and bring them into the actual How to Train Dragon lore canon. We just never really see it. To me, it would make so much sense that Stoic would make an annual holiday to celebrate the defeat of the Red Death, and ultimately the end to the Dragon War. Though how they celebrate this is quite dubious. They pit their own dragons against each other in a battle tournament, which doesn't really reflect their current attitudes. I think it would be more appropriate to imagine it as more of a dragon riding skills tournament, kind of similar to the editions we see in the Thorfest games. And what's funny, the victor of the tournament is dubbed the Dragon Master. Perhaps that's where Astrid got it from?
And the greatest dragon master this world has ever seen.
It's not really important, but that's just my little headcanon anyway. In the back of the Wild Zone, there's a cave that you can enter where you can play some great mini games. This is a place where you visit a lot throughout the playthrough, as I think this is the easiest way to gain XP. If you get the medal for the corresponding difficulty, you could get gold and unlock more customizations, and also rarer foods and resources. This is where I got a specific ingredient for a quest line. So the mini games themselves. There's the ice sculpting, which I found the easiest. Mash the corresponding button in the gauge. There's the looping race. It's just flying through all the rings. Flying shepherd, grabbing the sheep and then putting them back into the pen with a time limit. Memory torch, which is just Simon Says. And puzzle dragon, where you need to memorize the customizations of a dragon and recreate it within the time limit. Oh yeah, I may have forgot to mention so far, there is customizations in this game. If you're wondering why my Zippleback on Knife Fury looks kinda odd, that's why. You can have the base of the dragon set to any colour, and there are 4 sets of styles which you can choose from for the different parts of the body, like the back, the head, the claws, and the wings, for example. There's some nice variety and with some cool themes, and some which are outright cursed. It's bald! It's a bald one, and it's a Shrek Night Fury. I don't like it. If you're curious for what I ultimately ended up designing my dragons like,
For the Night Fury, I went for like quite a sleek design, as if like Hecka would like design this dragon, giving the red highlights and purple markings. For the Deadly Natter, I went with the bird theme. I gave it like the 3 horns, but then gave it the feathery head crest, the feathery butt, the feathery legs, and the feathery wings. It's giving parrot. Slay girl. For the Zippleback, I'm going for like sea beast with a fiery tail. It's giving Titleclass Dragon and turning it blue to camouflage with some contrast of like orange. And the Monster's Nightmare, I went for like the devil himself. He's going full hell-based with like firework backs and devil horns, keeping his hot-headed fiery motif. It's serving
I don't know who that was. Moving on. You do get XP throughout the game for your dragons. Leveling your dragon up gives them points to bump into stats. I would show you, but my face is in the way. There's strength, speed, stamina, power, and fire. Strength allows your dragon to hit its opponent harder. Speed improves your dragon's quickness and speed of its attacks. Stamina increases the number of life points of your dragon. Power increases the dragon's fire breath damage. And fire increases the quality of fire your dragon can breathe. I don't really know what that means. Perhaps the recharge time is quicker, or it lasts longer. Either way, different dragons have different amount of points you're able to apply to them, corresponding to the type of dragon. For example, the Night Fury excels in speed, the Deadly Nadder in strength, the Zippleback in fire, and the Monstrous Nightmare in power. I never unlocked the Grunkle, though I imagine it excels in stamina, as that's the only one I haven't mentioned. And once you unlock the Grapple Grounder, it also excels in strength. Okay. Additionally, there are checkpoints for every X amount of points you do bump into a stat. This can unlock some unique things like health regeneration and even more damage, dashes and evades quicker, an extra life bar, yada yada yada. I'm not going to go into super detail, but you kind of get the point. And because there are a limited amount of XP points that you can pump into a dragon, this encourages a strategy or a variety of gameplay styles even with the same dragon. Though it's not tons and tons, but for what this game is, it's pretty good, and it's great for replayability. And there's more. There's the caring mechanic, which I guess that aspect is on brand, but you need to keep your dragon happy and healthy so it can perform at its best. But over the course of battles, these bars would go down. Food, health, mood, trust, and rest, which all accumulates into the health bar of your dragon when they go into fight. By the end of the game, most dragons have at least the blue health bar, which is like 4 of them. Yeah, if you get that extra one, it will be pink, so that will be 5. And if you don't keep the maintenance up, they can start off with like the yellow or green range, which is like a health bar number 3 or 2. I think you get it. It's something to micromanage, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Collecting random crap around Berk and the Wild Zone is advised to keep them topped up, and you need to periodically give time for the dragons to rest. But for how little fighting you actually do, you could just top them all up before you go into the tournament. There are some side quests that you can do for the Berkians, but I only did one. I couldn't be bothered, and I don't think they're needed. It gives some resources and recipes, which is a better way to increase the micromanaging stats. But honestly, if you collect enough resources, the recipes aren't really needed. Just spam them with 50 chickens. The species of chickens will be wiped off from existence. Screw bird flu, we've got dragons to feed. Oh, and last thing, I would suggest getting everything, because there are some dragons that don't like certain types of resources. You could also go to the shopkeeper to buy the resources using the gold that you earn from winning tournaments, though I didn't really use this feature as I just found all the resources. It's not a very big map, and it's best to save that gold so you can unlock those legendary dragons later. And that's kind of all the grindy stats mechanics. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. As for the combat itself, I think it holds up a lot today, although I don't personally play a lot of these types of games, so I'm not too sure how I could critique it properly. I'm quite a novice in this aspect, so forgive me. There are 4 types of attacks, I believe. There are heavy hits, guard, breath attack, and light attacks, all of them having an advantage and disadvantage between which type you use. Like, the heavy attacks will break the guard, your guard will block most light attacks and probably the breath attacks as well, or at least reduce the damage. The breath attacks are used at a distance, and depending on the dragon, could be a good source of damage or just a quick little one-off attack to get some chip in. But your light attacks are a lot more quicker but are less damage. So if your opponent is doing a heavy attack, you can prevent them from doing that by jamming them real quick. Kind of a rock, paper, scissors-esque with like a gun. It's like that one kid in school. Additionally, there are some dodging mechanics. You can quickly move left and right and forward and backwards. I wasn't very good at doing that, but it's there. And one last thing, tapping a variety of these large, small, and breath attacks in a combination creates a combo, which is too much for me to go over specifically, but you get the gist. You've seen video games before, I imagine. If you haven't, then you're a child and you're too young to watch this video. Go away. Every time you finish a tournament, you unlock higher difficulties for the minigames and more combos you can learn for each dragon. And more importantly, you can add a new dragon to your roster. You do this by going to the docks and pick one of 5 dragons. The grapple grounder is unlocked by beating the game. So to wrap up this part of the review, I'm going to be ranking all 6 dragons that you play as in this game. Top 6 dragons, here we go. Number 6, the Monstrous Nightmare. It's quite slow, and a lot of its heavy attacks are very easily countered. Perhaps I didn't prioritise its speciality, which is its firepower, but this dragon wasn't really for me. Number 5 is the Deadly Nadder. Pretty decent all-rounder, but doesn't excel at anything. Kind of a jack-of-all-trades sort of dragon. And the one stat it does have higher than the other dragons is completely overshadowed by the Grapple Grounder, who also has a very high strength stat. Number 4 is Gronkle. I didn't play the Gronkle, but judging by fighting against them, they are fairly bulky and fast, so they could counter a counter against their blocking. They got me a little bit a few times. Number 3, the Grapple Grounder. Because it's a secret dragon, it's designed to be the most overpowered. You can see this with its firepower. It tracks the enemy. They are also fast and have good reach. Number 2, the Night Fury. Very fast if you upgrade their stats enough, and could probably outspeed everything. As long as you keep the pressure up, you'll probably barely get touched. And number 1, the Zippleback. Surprisingly, yes, I know. They are the best because they have the best reach. They can launch attacks from halfway across the stage, and counters the Night Fury, which need to get close. But I use this dragon the most because I found a combo which, basically won me the game. It completely stuns any enemy dragon all the time, which was great for me. And I did that over and over and over again. It was kind of a hard game. Again, I'm not used to these sort of games, so hard from my experience. And I didn't want to grind for another like 50 million hours, so I thought I would cheese it just to make my life a little bit easier. For the review of this game, I kind of just listed all the mechanics in it, and that's because it's fairly mid. Though as a fighting game, I guess it's fun. I don't know, you know, as I said before, I'm not a biggest fan of these types of games. But for a How to Train Dragon game, no. The customization, while a fun novelty, isn't what we're looking for. We still like to customize our own dragons, but not to the point where it's a completely different species. The roster of dragons you can play with is extremely limited, though that isn't a fault. The game is limited by the hardware it was released at, or the budget, whatever. My main point is I think as dragon fans, we would like to play with all the dragons that are available, though at this point in the franchise it was very small. It will expand in the future, but this is just a point that's going to be followed through. Likewise with the fighting mechanics, it's just not How to Train Dragon. It's not at all like the experience of becoming a dragon rider yourself. This also marks the beginnings of the minigames trope that we see through a lot of these games. We'll get into that. So I think I'm going to place it in C, because the game itself isn't really inherently bad, except for the excessive amount of grinding, but it's just not How to Train Dragon. So let's head back to the challenge and see how Past Me is coping after a 10-hour live stream. Oh, I've just got done streaming the first game, and I didn't complete it. This stream, or almost, clocked in at 10 hours, but I had to give up because this game was so tedious and laboring. Oh my god. I almost died. My hands hurt, my throat hurts, I'm tired. It's a Mortal Kombat game, and you fight and mash buttons constantly, and you're concentrating. There's mini games where you have to concentrate. It's like memory stuff, and I'm like, I can't be arsed with this, and it's all required because you need a shit ton of XP. There's a bunch of grinding so you can compete. I am exhausted. I thought this was going to be a 5-hour game. It said online it was 5 hours. I didn't even complete it within just under 10. Probably, maybe I can do it within 10. I don't know. This did put a little slight spanner in my works, because I really wanted to do a game a day. But thankfully, the next game is Wild Skies, and I believe that is 100%, like, max 5 hours. That would not be a lot. I'm knackered though. See you tomorrow for the rest of this and mods, guys. Oh, and on top of this, my face was out of focus. I'm too tired to set this shot up properly. And my computer broke on me. I could open tabs, but I couldn't interact with the tabs with my mouse. So I had to Alt F4 all my programs, shut down and relaunch my computer, and then end the stream. What have I gotten myself into? Before I ended the day, I started a new playthrough of a game that we all probably know, Rise of Berk. It's a mobile idle game, and to make any significant progress, it takes a while. So in the evenings, I'm going to be working on this. And for the review of the actual game itself, we'll do pretty much at the end of this challenge. But for now, I start by booting the game up, and follow along with a tutorial where Toothless goes out for his first exploration and gets a monstrous nightmare. I leveled it up so it can go fishing. You get down the first Berk's houses and upgrade the meat hall, enough so you can level up Toothless to go out for another exploration to get a Gronkle, which then you can level them up to get wood. At this point it's just the same things, continuing the quest lines, placing more Berk housing, upgrading the Dragon Academy, upgrading both fish and wood storage, sending Toothless off, which gets me a terrible terror. At this point you're tasked with rebuilding Fish Legs' home, and getting Meat Lug, which unlocks access to journeys, which is where you get your scripted rare pack and get a rumble horn. I did also rebuild Astrid's home and get Stormfly so she can go out for journeys as well. And that's kind of the tutorial over with, or at least the first 50 minutes of gameplay. So from there, I better get an early night, as I'll need to finish off the HTTYD Dragon game and play Wild Skies.
Okay, come on, you've got shit to do. Get out of bed, come on. You can't find the dragons.
And this is where everything crumbles, because after I planned and scripted and even recorded the challenge, I realised that the How to Train Dragon game for the DS is pretty much an entirely different game. I am an idiot. Though I decided to stream it anyway, and this game alone took an entire week to stream. So let me cover it now, and then we'll go back to the original challenge. Thankfully though, half of the things to talk about this game is already covered in the previous game. Like, yes, it is technically a different game, but the context is identical. It's still based around the Thursday event, and you still collect dragons to battle within a tournament. Though, weirdly, in this game, you don't get the option of choosing. You first go with the Night Fury or the Deadly Nana if you picked Astrid, and then you unlock the other dragon that you didn't initially get. And then it's a Zippleback, Gronkle, Monstrous Nightmare, and then Grapple Grounder, after you've completed the main game of course. And you also have to do a little quest line to unlock them, but the quest lines just defeat 3 dragons which drop the resources that you need. The main plot structurally is pretty much identical. You go and train your dragon, go to your first tournament. After that something happens, you go and do the couple of quests out in the fields, and go to your tournament, rinse and repeat like 4 times. And the reason why I'm not going into detail what specifically things you have to sort out, because it doesn't matter. It's just a random text box, and what you have to do physically is always end up at the end point of the new map that's unlocked. Well, I say map, it's just tiles with a different background. But this is one of the reasons why this game is so padded, because in order to get to the new area, you have to trudge through the previous area. And the further along in the game, the longer it takes to get to the new area. And on many of the tiles, there are going to be dragons that you're going to have to fight. I don't know what the puzzle is called, but it's that puzzle where you move, the dragon also moves, and you have to like sort of get around them, or you just bump into them and fight them and defeat them, which you're probably going to have to do because they force it upon you. Thankfully though, once you reach the end of the map, you can play a minigame which teleports you back home. But you can kind of see how the time just escapes you, and especially as you have to go to these different areas multiple times. In addition to, once you're up there, you're going to have to be moving around a lot for various quests. And it doesn't help, depending on your battle strategy for your dragon, it could either be over with in 1 turn, or take like 20. But we'll get into that. On top of the navigating issue, there's lots and lots of grinding. Yay! One of the key differences though is that instead of going to an arena to unlock combos and playing mini games to get XP, the whole system is completely different. However, it's as tedious, and even more repetitive. Right, I've avoided it long enough. The battling system. Instead of Pokken Tournament, it's Pokemon-ish. It's a turn-based RPG in genre, but in execution, it's a bit different. I imagine they did this as the DS was extremely popular at this point, but it couldn't fully support a whole 3D fighting game like the consoles could, so they just made whatever this is. Straight away you can either choose to attack, which is kind of self-explanatory, swap move, which is kind of weird, you could just change your moveset on the fly, but that's kind of cool. Items, which to be honest I never really used, and you can run from the opponent, which I feel like I should have done to speed along the gameplay. Instead of taking it in turns, there's these two bars, which when filled up indicates when the dragon is next going to attack. There are moves that can slow this bar, or can speed it up as a self buff, and different dragons have different speeds. A good example of this is Night Fury is going to be obviously faster than the Gronkle. And more importantly, each move uses a different amount of bars. For example, for a status move, it may just use a couple, whereas for a big, massive attack, it may just deplete your energy entirely, allowing your enemy to have 3 turns in one go. And there's so many moves and other status conditions, it's too much for me to go over individually or go to detail with it. Just note that it's very good. You can see it in a points tree, and there's a good 3, maybe 4 strategies per dragon, so awesome for replayability. There's 4 different sections with each of their own good syncs and disadvantages and advantages. And this is where some of the grindy aspects come in, because to unlock moves further down the tree, you have to use a move into battle a certain amount of times to get enough XP, and then you can unlock the later ones. Though it's designed as a gradual thing that you can work on and change your strategies over time, but I feel like most people would just dedicate 5 to 10 minutes just working on these moves so you could just get the strategy that you want straight away, especially as you fight harder and harder enemies. Each tree is unique to each dragon, so I think instead of trying to go through it systematically and go through it all, I think it'll be best to share what strategies I employed for my dragons, as I try to go for a variety. Though personally I do prefer some strategies over others, so there will be some biases within this. This is more of an overall look just to see what the gameplay is like. Also, I'm going to use this moment to rank these dragons in order with which species I think is the best, though it's purely based on my experience and which strategy I decided to go with, so if you go for a completely different one, then the order could be completely different. I know all this is subjective. So anyway, top 6 dragons, again, number 6. For the Night Fury, I sort of went with 2 sets. Because I got this dragon at the beginning of the game, I never really got the opportunity to unlock its full learn set, so after I completed the game, I grinded a little bit extra to unlock more of the abilities of the Night Fury, but in the early game I found it quite useful. I prioritised negative effects and chip damage, like burn and wound. Both of those do tick damage every X amount of bar that was filled back up. I don't know how many specifically, but yeah, when you both have them on at the same time, it just drains the HP of the enemy dragon. Then the second late game set, I went for a no-hit strategy, where I'll increase my speed and dodge and blind the enemy, so whenever they attack, they won't be able to hit me, and then I'll boost myself with Wrath, and then take them out within a couple attacks, hopefully. Though the reason why I put the Night Fury so far up the list is because it's mainly relying on RNG, and it doesn't really have a lot of attacks that can hit really hard, nor have any specific counters against any other dragons. So every battle that you enter with this dragon, it's always going to be a little while. For the Monstrous Nightmare, I went for a one-hit wonder, basically buffing this dragon up so much that it takes down any other opponents literally in one hit, by increasing its speed and wrath, its critical hit ratio, and evasion and blinding the enemy, so it gives the dragon a chance to not be hit at all. And whilst this set was the most fun, and by far the quickest, I managed to get through a big chunk of the late game by this. This dragon also does leave itself to be quite vulnerable. There was a couple of matches where I did lose, either having to work around the defensiveness of some dragons or the evasion tactics. Having one big strong attack works great, but if the damage is reduced and or avoided entirely, you have to set yourself up all the way back up again, which leaves you quite vulnerable. For the Gronkle, I went for the buff set, stacking defensive abilities and weakening the opponent so the incoming damage is nil, whilst increasing the wrath and speed so the Gronkle moves faster and attacks harder. I also put on a couple of big attacks, like Cannibal, which does additional burn damage, and then like Slam for instance. The Gronkle embodies a tank build, which is very much suitable for this dragon, and whilst it does have some unique merits, by having a move that sets up shield, which blocks an attack for that turn, countering dragons who need to hit hard for that one turn. Whilst this strategy is extremely effective at times, but this dragon still falls into the trap of you need to get your timings correct, and it's a balancing act, and each battle will just take forever. This is emblematic of a playstyle of playing it safe. But the reason why I'm putting it so low on this list is because the enemy AI isn't that complicated, and the risk that I'm alluding to is kind of made up. For the Deadly Nether, I use both a poison and healing strategy, having Toxify so if the enemy attacks me they will get poisoned, or poison darts as a direct attack and to poison the foe. Then use Regenerate to do tick healing, and the attack Hunger for large damage and to regain any large amounts of HP. This one I purposely went for a longer strategy, as I'll have the consistent damage of the poison and the constant regeneration, which is an ability I would rank higher than most, as for say toughening yourself up or increasing your evasion to dodge has no sustainability to it and you would eventually fall. Whereas as long as you can consistently out-heal the damage coming in, you can kind of do this forever. But this dragon could also hit hard, so this is why out of all the stallier strategies, I put this dragon higher up. There's some adaptability that you can employ, depending on your opponent. For the zipper back, I went for like a life sealing moveset, using Siphon which gives me a portion of the healing after I attack someone, and then I use Shred for large damage, and an extra chip with the wounding ability. This strategy has the benefits of both the Monstrous Nightmare set and the Deadly Nadder, the sustainable healing and the hitting hard to get battles done and over with, and personally I found it quite successful, so it's going in second. And lastly there's the Grapple Grounder, which kind of has the same abilities as a lot of these other dragons. So I just went for another self buff, giving it shield, wrath, speed, evasion, and hitting hard with big attacks. So kind of a combination of Monstrous Nightmare and Gronkle. Oh, it can also heal, so also with Deadly Nadder. I don't know what to say, this dragon is a bit of everything, and I think that's why this dragon is the most overpowered. You could really customize it to however you want it to be. So yeah, they're my sets and the playstyles I went with, though there are a couple of more like mechanics, which I guess I should just sort of say now. There's critical hits, which if you know Pokemon kind of just does the same thing, just an extra powerful attack. Though I think you can charge it up and you have to play like a mini game with your stylus to attack with it. Depending on how well you do, I think it does more damage. In addition, there are armor sets to collect, though that sounds way more impressive than it is. I think you get like a tail, chest and like headpiece. It doesn't really look like any of them though, but you can see it visually affecting the dragon, so sure. And these pieces affect certain stats, like fortitude, agility, accuracy, offense, and defense. Though what these really mean is kind of hard to quantify. There is a whole building system and I think possibly an upgrading system. Also there's different qualities like flawed or pristine. It's a little bit meaningless, just pick the best stats for your dragon honestly. There's also a tier system with different minerals being better than the next. You unlock the new tier after you defeated a tournament. I think there's like bronze, iron, cobalt, and emerald. This is kind of going off of memory. Again, it really doesn't matter, literally just pick the best one that you see. Because to be honest with you, despite how it appears, it's an extremely forgettable mechanic. Because Wild Dragons also drop these, and you get so many that I was just ending up binning them. So all you need to do is just get to the new area and just look at the stats for like 2 seconds, find what's the best one and just plonk it on your dragon. I'm sure there's strategies or micro optimizations, but to be honest, I got through 99% of the game without all that, so you'll be fine. Though I should mention the reason why I got to 99% of the game is because I didn't actually complete the post game. I got to like the end point and there's just a last like boss rush or just a really difficult enemy, and I believe if I really sat there and figured out, I probably could have defeated it, but at this point I was pressed for time as I had like other things to do, and I'm not expecting you to get much, if anything, after completing the post game. And that's more or less it for the fighting mechanics. There are some details that I probably have missed, but the idea is just to get the overall picture. And out of the two fighting mechanics I personally prefer would be this one. I grew up with Pokemon, so I like strategies and turn-based and thinking about what you're doing rather than just panicking and mashing buttons, though there's probably an extra degree of skill to that. I feel like it makes it more accessible to more people, but would we have a fighting mechanic within our Dream Dragons game? Probably not. Though it's interesting to look at in the context of this time in the franchise history. I should also mention the customization is also in this game, though it's way more cursed. It's horrific, but the combinations just work better together. It's just way more funny as well. Like, you could get a whole section to choose from with the teeth. Why can't you customize the teeth? And the thing that I personally really enjoyed is you can actually nickname the dragons. I don't know why you couldn't do that in the console version. You get more attached to them and it gives them more personality. And I think I ought to share the world my creations.
Yeehaw, it's Crazy Jim. He's very pink and he's a fluff and Night Fury with crazy in his eyes. He's Crazy Jim.
This is cool. He has a great big beaver mouth with fins going down his back and spikes at the end of his tail. You might get into a wee bit of trouble fighting this dragon. Skull and flavor! This is Pain and Gain. Yeah, it was supposed to be Pain and Gain, but I couldn't fit it in, so he's a rowboat now. This zippleback has bull horns and sharp, prominent teeth with big blocky spines on his back and a spiked tail. He's colored red, which is awesome. Yeah!
This is Magma. She hasn't gone to the dentist in a while, as she likes to be a fairy princess. So she has butterfly wings on. And she's very sparky. And she wants to be your friend. Would you be our friend?
This here's Alligator. He's a green monstrous nightmare, and he's very spiky. Even his wings are just spikes with a thegamize at the end. He's going down under like he'll do to you.
Hi, Touch. I'm very dangerous. I'm very angry. Grr. I have razor sharp spines along my back and a club tail to go boop. I'm colored blue to put my enemies in a false sense of security so I can kill them. Yay!
Though I guess if we were gonna rank it, the format is just like the other game and just doesn't really work and not quite How to Train Dragon. Especially with the fighting with other dragons part, which were, you know, the same criticisms as before really. So I guess I'll put it in the same spot with the other game.
You gotta make coffee, you gotta eat breakfast. Eat breakfast, drink water. Come on, you need to get out of bed. You've got stuff to do.
So back to Wild Skies. This game was a web game developed for the Cartoon Network website. Wait, what? Why did I include this game into the main game lineup? This is a web game, not on a console or a mainline game. Okay. I'm going to talk about this game and kind of bring it to the standards of any other like console game because I think it deserves that. I guess it shows the merit of how good this web game really is. Ish. It's good enough to be compared to other console games, but out of them, I don't think it's very good. But we'll get into it. And because I've already failed this challenge and completely destroyed the format of this video, at the end of talking about this game, I'm going to be talking about all the other web games, or as best as I can. Some are lost to time, and some are just, do you even count this as a game? This game in itself took 4 hours to complete, though to 100% it could take a lot longer. There's 9 main areas with both walkable and flyable parts. While walking, you could get a new dragon, gather the different food types for taming and energy, and explore, I guess. It's kind of just it. In each of those activities, it's kind of just a rhythm game. I think you just need to press space in the right time. I don't know, at least there's something to do, like a slight mini game to get these creatures. But more importantly, you can fly around on your dragon, and there are many species, like up to 11 you can tame. You can ride pretty much every dragon up until Riders of Berk. Not defenders though, we're missing a couple like the Skrill and the Screaming Death. But honestly, this is heading in the direction of what we want for the How to Train Dragon games. Be able to play and ride any of the dragon species, you could dive bomb or boost or even fire. You will have to use their food type in order to do that, to refill it up, but hey, it's like a degree of control over these dragons. So yeah, the 9 areas are unique locations and all have a different map design. Some are cool and some are just kind of the same-ish. There's Berk's village, which I think looks pretty cool. This is one of the first renditions of having Berk itself in a 3D format that you can explore. Hello. And this location holds the shop and to be able to get muttons and stuff. Next location is the Unlandable Cove. Despite its name, you can actually land in it. And this is a very thick wooded area, or a dense forest, or swamp area. Here you can get the Changewing and the Deadly Nadder. And to be honest, it's a fairly unique location. I never really see anything like this in any of the other games, so it's cool. Next is the Woods That Howl. I guess this is the generic foresty, woody area. But this one is quite hard to distinguish from some of the other locations, as a lot of the others are still kind of foresty and woody. There's nothing overly unique in it to make it stand out, though it's kind of pretty looking. Here you can tame the Gronkle and the Whispering Death. And there's a really cool detail when you tame it. You use the brush to brush its teeth, which is explained in the Book of Dragons short. The Great West Ocean is a map with like a giant lake in it and white cliffs. Here you can tame the Scoldron, though I do have to admit this is a very similar location to some of the others. I personally quite like the Pale Cliffs aesthetic, as it's quite British, but it's not really unique enough to help it stand out as a location. Like the Black Heart Bay, another location with a sort of a lake in the middle, and instead of pale cliffs, it's orange cliffs. Here you can tame the hideous Zippleback, though I do have to question the orange cliffs. It's given me like Australia or like an outback vibes, which does not suit the location of the Barbaric Archipelago, especially where you tame the hideous Zippleback. Is that in Australia? There's also the Wild Dragon Cliffs, and this one is indistinguishable between like the wooded area. This is what I mean, a lot of it just blends in. Though it does have a neat waterfall in the middle of it, so that's kind of cool. And here you can tame the Typhumarang. There's the Wrecker's Reef, which is just the typical ice location. Here you can tame the Thunderdrum. I do have to admit it looked kind of pretty, and it would make sense for an icy area in this sort of game, but it's to be expected. Similarly, there is the Lava Lout Island, which is the typical lava area. But again, it would make sense, especially for the location where you tame Stoker class dragons, though the Smothering Smoke Breath isn't Stoker. Anyway, here you can get the Monstrous Nightmare and the Smothering Smoke Breath. And lastly is Bad Mist Mountain. This is where you can get the Night Fury. The flyable area is once again indistinguishable between some of the other areas. It's kind of cliffy and rocky. Yeah, there's less green to make it slightly stand out, but meh. But the walkable part I do find quite pretty. It gives me like a dark woods vibes, especially with the purple flowers really popping out. It gives a very mystical energy to it, quite appropriate to arguably the most mysterious dragon. There are an assortment of challenges which make up the bulk of the game. The cyan coloured ones, which are just flying through all the rings. There are two variations what I found. There's one where the course is laid out fully in front of you, or a variation with rings peering one after the other. There's no real difference in the actual gameplay or thinking, just follow the rings. But the goal is to go through them as fast as possible. Boosting is necessary to get the best score. Oh, and if you miss one, you're gonna have to do a very, very slow turnaround. The other colour is red, shooting all the targets as fast as possible. Again, boosting is needed for this. But it is hard to juggle shooting, boosting, flying, and keeping your stamina up, especially with the jank controls. I don't think there are variations on this one, but I know some later courses have variations on the targets, with some showing up all at once and or moving targets. And the last coloured minigame is the purple ones. Another one with two variations, either collecting the tokens in a course or collecting tokens around a map, all leading again to have the fastest time. And of course boosting is still very much necessary. This is kind of like flying through all the rings again. One with the tokens all over the map could be a little bit annoying if one is like hidden in the corner and you can't find it. Though I do find that kind of enjoyable because it gives you a chance to really absorb the surroundings and it makes sure as you go to every nook. Completing these challenges gets you up to 3 stars, I guess. They're kind of useless. Also a set amount of coins according to the amount of stars you get. The stars are more of a completionist thing. Anyway, but you use these coins in shops to buy the tools necessary to harvest the different food types, and extra storage for them, so you're not landing so often to gather more. I never bought all the items, as they weren't required, but it's an okay progression system, though I do have to admit this game is kind of boring. Because it's a web game, it's kind of just completing stuff for the sake of completing it. It's literally just something for the kids to do to entertain themselves through like wet lunch. In the actual fun factor, it's kind of just repetitive. And also the game that I had was broken. I can only access the first 6 dragons at the end. So some of the other dragons I got, I could revisit. But that's not really a critique on the game. This is a fan recovery and some of the coding may be a little bit jank. Not that I'm complaining at all. Game archiving is incredibly important. And the fans did a really good job with this. This game has been shut down, of course. This was made roundabout when Riders of Berk was on television. So, yeah. But I do have to say the controls are really not good. The arrow keys are to turn the dragon, then you have space to fire, C to boost, and X to refill the stamina. It probably would make more sense if like WASD was to move, then E was to refill, space was to shoot, and shift was to like boost. Also, I think that would help with accessibility with only needing one hand. Though I could be wrong. I don't know why I'm talking about helping with accessibility. I don't know anything information about this. I'm not an authority. Look, dragons are on screen. But this game is interesting. It's definitely heading in the right direction of what we want for a dragons game, especially with being able to play as any dragon species you want, learning to tame and train them. It's got a lot of the key elements that would be cool, but in execution, it's very janky and blech. But for a web game, is it really that bad? I think I'm gonna put it in C tier. It has the right components for a good dragons game, but its execution was boring. And if you think I'm being that unfair, you know, there's some classic web games which are a lot more fun than this. But before I leave and forget about this game forever, shall we rank the dragons that were in it? Yeah! And surprisingly, there's quite a lot, so, you know, buckle up. We're starting off with the first category, which I think were just bad. Personally, I just found them not fun to play as. Starting at number 11, the Thunder Drum. Faster going forward, but the turning radius is awful on all accounts. Number 10 is the Skuldron. Not too speedy, the left and right are good, but the up and down is not so much. Number 9, the Typoomerang. It was fast and of course it would have a big hitbox, but ironically that's what also brings it down. It wasn't very nimble and it was quite chunky in the sense of I couldn't see where I was going. Number 8, the Monstrous Nightmare. Again, it's another fast one with the left and right turning being pretty good, but it just has to slow up and down. I don't get why the turning radiuses between left and right is different. It just like, ugh, makes it feel horrible. Number 7, we have the Smothering Smoke Breaths. In all areas, these guys are great. They're fast, nimble, but the biggest thing is that it's tiny. It has like a very small hitbox. So you're gonna have to be quite accurate at trying to hit like the coins and going through the rings. So now we're on the category with for the dragons who are okay. For example, number 6, Gronkle. They're not too fast, but they have great turning radiuses. This feels like an easy mode for these games. Number 5 is the Deadly Nadder. Decent on all fronts, and it has a pretty good boost. Great starting dragon, to be honest. Number 4, the Changewing. It's another fast one with fast left and right turning radiuses. Though a tad slower up and down, it threw me for ages. I got really stuck on like a very specific course with the Changewing. I don't know what happened, but I was here for ages. And the last category are the good dragons. Like number 3, the Night Fury. This is the last dragon you unlocked and it's very fast, but it's not quite as nimble as I would like it to be. It feels like it can't quite keep up with how fast it is. Number 2, the Whispering Death. It's fast, it's nimble. The only downside is that its hitbox is on the slightly smaller side, but it just felt great to play with. And number 1, the Hideous Zippleback. It is very nimble, decently fast, but it also has a great reach. Every time I was like slightly out, I managed to turn the head just enough so it would actually hit the goal. So it was just like, pretty good. And why is it again with the Zippleback being like the best dragon in these games? Well, for me at least. But yeah, should we cut back to previous me after streaming this game? I just got done playing Miles Skies, a very boring game, but luckily a lot shorter than the previous, and a little bit less stressful, even though there was at one point where I was that close to raging, but luckily I realised I don't need to try hard. So yeah, there wasn't really a credits or an end. I just got it to a point where I'm like, okay, I got all the dragons, I've unlocked most things, I'm satisfied, that'll do. There's not much to the game, considering it is just a web thing. What's the next game? What is the next game? The assortment of web games. And because these are a lot more basic compared to what we've seen previously, I'm going to be covering these much more quickly. Though I should add, for this section I am heavily relying on the wiki and using this video of a compilation of all the How to Train Dragon games from Mini Evolution, because I think it would be borderline impossible to find every single one. Especially since like 90% of them are like shut down at this point. Quickfire round, starting with Dragon's Training Academy. Unfortunately I was unable to play it, I could find where I could. But there is some footage online of the demo version. Thanks to this person to uploading this footage. I'm just going to review it based on the limited amount of stuff I've seen from this and the wiki. But by the looks of it, it's continuing the flawed Dragons 1 game theming of dragons versus other dragons, or dragon riders fighting other dragons. I've said this before, but as a How to Train Dragon game, this isn't on brand with the franchise nowadays. But this time the system is a lot less in depth. Just press the button and it uses its ability and there's a cooldown. Though from the screenshots from the wikis, there's kind of interesting extra mechanics, like you can tame the Scoldron and the Bone Napper, which is a rare dragon to see outside of its initial media. There are some elements that we'd like that will be continuing on through these games, like playing with as many dragons that were available at the time. Perhaps as a form of care mechanic, because you could see a mood bar, and also you could visit their lair, and in some screenshots you could see like toys, so perhaps you can interact with them, which is cool, but very basic. And you can also customize your own Viking, but all this just giving me a very cheap phone game vibe. And I'm assuming it's not going to be the most funnest of games on here. So yeah. Moving on to Dragons Training Legends. Kind of weird, this is kind of like a sequel to this previous web game. In this one though, there are 4 different games. The Legend of the Nada, you sort of just walk and then jump and then fire at obstacles in your way and collect the coins to extend the time, and then I think the quicker you complete it, the higher the score. I don't know, whatever, this was just jumping over everything at this point. The Legend of the Grunkle, you're just controlling the dragon and moving around and having to avoid obstacles. You need to get to a specific end goal. That one really did not interest me. Didn't help that I wasn't very good at it either. Legend of the Scoldron, it reminded me of Hungry Shark. The Scoldron constantly follows your mouse, and to increase your score you have to eat the fish and avoid the junk that is being dropped into the ocean. Truly an environmental message of our generation here. I did find this one the most enjoyable. And then there's the Legend of the Night Fury, where you have to prevent the sheep and the Vikings being flown off by the Gronkles by firing at them, and then also you have to pick up the Vikings, although I just missed them all the time. This one was kind of fun because you just spam shooting at the Gronkles, but it gets dull quite quickly. As you can tell, I did manage to play this one, but I got all this footage in a collective 10 minutes. I got that bored that quickly. Similarly, Gobber's Dragon Training Games is another one with a bunch of games compiled into one. This screenshot's the only evidence of the title of this game. Apologies for being extremely blurry, but I've got to have to work with what I got. You have Night Fury's feeding time, you have to avoid Toothless's blast, and then also time throwing fish at his face so he can eat. You have to get a certain amount of fish in his gob before the time runs out. If you get hit, the penalty is time, and the way you dodge, you just move left and right. It's kind of weird. Gronkle's Bucket Battle, you play as fish legs and you have to, I guess, chuck the water bucket on his face. Though the most nitpicky of nitpicks, you don't do that for a Gronkle. But also you have a shield, so you have to defend against his attack, and then, I don't know, this game didn't really work online. Either that or I completely missed something. I don't know, this is the most boring and nonsensical out of the lot. The Deadly Nada Zone attack was the one that I got down the most easiest. When the dragon is facing forward, you have to stay within a certain hemisphere to stay in its blind spot, and then when its wings twitch, you have to quickly move to the side to get out of its way because it turns its head to look in that original blind spot. But it has very similar controls to the Night Fury one by just dragging your mouse across to control how to steer it. It's easiest for me, but yeah, it's boring. Why am I still talking about this? Hideous Zippleback of Double Trouble! This one glitched a couple of times, but I didn't manage to do it because I just didn't fail. It glitched when I failed. But you either have to rapidly click your mouse to create noise, and then also you have to time the twins jump to hit between each other, and then also time a dodge between the tail, and you rinse and repeat like 3 times. So you're just clicking randomly. Rhythm, the fun rhythm. Monstrous Nightmares Reptile Rodeo. You're playing as Snotlout and you have to jump onto Hook Fang and I guess stay on. I don't think I fully understood the mechanics of this one because I just died over and over again. You have to time a click and then move the mouse left and right to like juggle the balancing thing. And then I don't know what you do with the jump, I just fell off and got eaten. And lastly, there is Terrible Terror's Gobber Clobber. Unfortunately, this was no longer on the internet as a thing you can play, but there is one video on YouTube by JetJeff5. Thank you for archiving this, but by the looks of it, all you have to do is just click the Terrible Terrors as they appear on Gobble's back. So, the most simplistic and probably boring out of them all. Great! It was so worth hunting around for ages for this footage. Okay, it was worth it because the music they used in the background was this.
Hey there, Delilah, what's...
The most random 2000s song. I also really need to speed this up because we've got so many more to go through. Outcast Attack. I tried to get this working, but unfortunately it didn't, so I'm going to have to use footage from other people. I apologise. I did look into the gameplay more and it's fairly simplistic. You fly a dragon around the screen, you collect terrible terrors and coins and avoid obstacles. You can fire at some and you just dodge for others. Eventually you can get enough money to get a new dragon and you go up the scale and I guess in difficulty as well. How to fly a dragon. This game I found on my own whilst going back on the Wayback Machine. There's literally the minigame from the DS version of the How to Train Dragon 1 game. You slide your dragon left to right and avoid obstacles. If you pick up sheep you can regenerate some lives. It's way too basic. Fireball Frenzy is another one that I can get working, but this game is identically translated into School of Dragons. I'm not too sure what came first, this mini game in a web game, or it was designed for School of Dragons. Probably the latter, but because it counts as a web game, I'm gonna include it in this. You usually would just have your character and your dragon, but in this instance it'll be Hiccup and Toothless. You fire at your targets, like sheep and dragons with different amount scores, but you have to avoid the friendly Vikings, otherwise that'll be negative scores. Highest score wins. Dragon Cliff Climbing is extremely weird. It's a tying game to Race to the Edge using Hiccup's design in that, and you automatically run, so you have to click to jump, and you can hold click to glide, and you double click to switch direction. Proceed platformer. It's extremely basic. This one's extremely interesting. This is Dragon's Battle minigame. It uses music and the screenshots from the first How to Train Dragon game. And essentially it's kind of the same thing, just extremely boiled down. It's Hiccup and Toothless versus Astrid and Stormfly. You can choose which dragon you play as, either Toothless or Stormfly. You have a light attack and a fire attack, and a block, and move left and right. That's it. And the AI is extremely simple. Like, you just mash the basic attack button and you'll probably win. But I find it hilarious that they made a web game version of the first How to Train Dragon game. And I find it even more hilarious. That is so bad. There's Dragon Races, the Dragon Berry Dash, another one that I couldn't find a working version of, so I'm going to have to work on from other people's footage, but by the looks of it you're playing with Hiccup and Toothless, and you have to win a race against this unnamed dragon. This one looks a little bit more competent than others, as there's a selection of items that you can choose as you're racing, ones that probably give you a boost and I don't know what the others do. And also you can fire at the enemies, so I'm assuming you can slow them down if you hit them. Keeping with the theming, we have Dragon's Racer. I had a surprising amount of fun with this one. It is extremely basic as you're playing as a dragon flying around a course, but there's neat progression for like 30 minutes. There's a number of courses after you complete one, and if you can collect the coins, you can unlock new races. Honestly, if this system was expanded upon, I can see it being quite fun. Another one that I couldn't find online, but it's called Dragon Training. Well, by the looks of it from the footage, it could be a game from the DVD? I don't know. I'm just going to include this, and if it's not, then just ignore this. By the looks of it, it's another one that's assortment of minigames, but the only ones I can see is you bashing the shield to confuse and hideous Zippleback, and blocking something from a Gronkle's attack. There's one that's called Dragon's Lair, and I couldn't find this anywhere online again, and just judging by what I can see the footage of, I don't even know what it is really. It's like a civilization sort of building. I don't know, it looks quite interesting. I really wish I was able to play it. There's Flight School, which is another one where flying through the sky and dodging obstacles, though this one looks a little bit more fleshed out and professional because the flying is actually animated. By the looks of it, you can grab the coins and I'm sure you could spend that in a shop. Oh, and you can fire at your enemies, which is nice. And then there's like a match 3 game, which is kind of self-explanatory, just match the symbols in a 3. This is like the lowest tier game you'll ever find. So as you can tell, I saw no point in playing this. And there's a bunch of other lazy ones, of course, like jigsaw puzzles with different renders. There's multiple of these. There's multiple matching games, which you tap the tile and you have to, you know how those work. There's spot the difference. There's colouring in as well. Oh, and there's like going through a maze. These are just random games with dragons iconography in it. Moving on to some of the 9 realm stuff, it's kind of more the same with some other the repeating game like styles that I'm not going to mention again. But notably there is a Dragons vs Drones game, which funny enough it looks cheaper than all of the other games I've mentioned previously, matching the TV show that it was based on. Literally just a couple of frames of animation and basic parallaxing. The artwork is fairly basic as well, but there is a progressive level system. It gets harder as you go on, and you can play as the different riders with different speed levels and controllability to it. And the controls are just utter garbage. The turning circle is non-existent, and I guess you press spacebar to boost and that's it, whilst you have to avoid enemies, while the drones and the nature around you. Awful. I left the last couple of ones to last because I kind of find these a little bit interesting. There's the Dragon's Card Battler minigame, which is just top trumps. You fight against an AI and you have to choose the bigger number. But there's potentially like canon information about these dragons here. I don't know if they line up with the other bits of canon information that we have.
I don't know.
And lastly, DreamWorks Dragons online card game. I'm going to be using a lot of the information from the wiki because you need to have like a full login and everything to play this game, unfortunately. And the website that it was originally hosted on is poof kaput. Out of it, but that makes sense because it requires more than just the game. The wiki states, the online card game is centered around the use and exploration of the official How to Train Dragon website. The player receives some level 1 cards and must earn experience and the game currency gold. These are earned by finding secret codes around the whole site, as well as doing the card tournament challenges daily. So incorporating the usage of exploring the site is pretty cool. I don't overly know how extensive this feature was, like were the codes just extremely easy to find, or was there some level of hunting and puzzle solving involved? Either way is meant for the audience to interact with the How to Train Dragon site more. The player has 3 daily challenges. The goal is to gain levels, maximum of 5, and purchase new cards with golds earned. So it's designed to be a continuous gameplay experience, encouraging the player to revisit the website over and over again, if not daily. I imagine the goal is to keep you invested in the website because this is where the official news and other games would be on. But how effective this was? Well, it's hard to say, as well as how fun the actual game itself is. The tournament works by a character such as Hiccup presenting a challenge involving dragons. A dragon card will be presented, and the player must select a card from those they have available to challenge that card. Challenge outcomes are decided by the computer based on the stats of the 2 cards in play. So, kinda disappointing. It kinda just boils down to choosing the bigger number, and there isn't the most strategy behind it. I'm not expecting like famous card games level of like strategy, but like, it's just top trumps again. But whatever, let's break it down a little bit more. By the looks of the screenshot, it's based on probability, sizing up the stats of attack, defense, and speed. There is also the classes interacting with each other. Most strategical card games have like elements that have advantages and disadvantages over each other, and this tries to replicate that, but with the dragon classes, but it really falls short because it just doesn't make sense. There's no communal understanding of which classes would inherently be better than the other, like in like Pokemon types. Like water beats fire. So unfortunately you would have to be constantly referring to it, and even then you just pick the class that would beat the enemy class. Though I do have to say the card art is quite cool. It is just like the typical renders of these dragons. It's nothing holistically special, but there's some like basic information, and like it kind of looks like there will be like a bonus ability, like an effect or something, but I don't think it is. Anyway, it looks more promising, but in reality, no. And that's all the web games I think there are. I may have missed some, and some that I don't even know if they were official or not. Like within the selection there was like even a Flappy Bird, but How to Train Dragon. Remember Flappy Bird? But at this point, it doesn't matter. They're all F tier. For what they are fine. Some are a lot worse than others, but some are either not on brand as a How to Train Dragon game, or just extremely boring, and is purely meant to occupy you for 30 minutes as you wait for the next lesson. All of these are a summary of the worst aspects integrated into the main games, the mini-games, so they're all staying here. And I want to get back on track with the actual challenge. So I booted up the next game in the list, How to Train Dragon 2, the video game. By now the franchise has got its branding more clear, flying, training and bonding with your reptile pals, over outright sending them 6 feet under. Whilst I am fine with dragon on dragon combat, having a main game around it doesn't really match the ethos of all dragons are actually misunderstood and good, and plus bullying dragons doesn't really make you feel like a dragon rider. But this game does. Focusing on flying and exploration, this game contains my favourite flying mechanics out of all the Dragon games. I'm going to be starting here as it is the foundation for this game, and overall I think it's superb, if not a little clunky, which we'll get into. I'm going to be referring to the Xbox controls as that's the one I am most familiar with because I've played it with them, but you could interpret it to your preferred platform if you find it easier. Right from the gate, as a rider you are constantly moving forward. You can hold down A to boost your speed and hold down B to slow down. If you hold down the button long enough you can do a full stop and hover there for a moment. RB and LB are cool as you can use it to tilt your character by holding them down, but it's primarily used as a hard banking left or right, utilising it as a sharper turning radius, which is nice. But there were some situations where it still wasn't enough. Like if you want to do a full turnaround, it would have been cool to be able to press a button and it does an animation and flips your character around a full 180. Also, I think I would have preferred to be able to go stationary and have that as the default and press and hold the button to accelerate instead, kind of like driving games. Still keeping B as a braking button. But I think this was just a preference thing. I did find the camera to be too close whilst flying normally, meaning with no acceleration. So I had to be constantly on the go, which unfortunately never lends a chance for you to sit there and take in your full surroundings. If you press Y whilst flying over a fellow dragon rider, you could boot them off their dragon. Though it can be done to yourself in return, which didn't make me very happy.
I don't know. I'm in 5th?
Yeah, I got very salty. Similarly, a funny mechanic is if you slam into the ground, you can fall off your dragon. Seeing Stoic fly off into the stratosphere will never not look funny.
Skullcrusher! Help!
A neat addition, especially for Hiccup, if he could activate his flight suit, and you could glide alongside Toothless, fully recreating We Go Where No One Goes scene. That would be the dream. There is a dodge button if you press X, which in theory would allow you to avoid incoming firepower and other dragon riders sending you to Valhalla, but you can't really see these threats incoming, so practically it's not that useful. Though it does look really cool. I think to make it slightly better and more practical is to keep the dragon on the side they dodge to, with the camera following them back into the centre, instead of the dragon comes back to the centre of the frame, if that makes sense. This way it would act like a sidestep, helping with macro adjustments in the air. Lastly in your arsenal, we have the dragon's firepower. Holding down RT, the game locks onto the nearest target, allowing you to let go and it fires. If struck, the opponent slows down, giving you an opportunity to overtake. There is an option just to tap the button to fire, so if you time one correctly you can get a very quick shot off. I didn't struggle with this system whilst playing the game, so I think it was made very well, albeit a little bit basic, and it's identical between all the dragon riders, and it's kind of weird because these dragons have a variety of fire powers. Honestly, this isn't a huge issue. The system works, it's enjoyable. I personally just love the feeling of having different fire powers when playing with different dragons. I'm aware that my criticisms for this flying mechanic is ultimately nitpicky, but I feel like that gives credit to how well this system works. Though because it's the main system that you're constantly interacting with and what everything else is built around, those nitpicks do feel a lot bigger. But overall there was this learning curve to this flying system. In this stream you can clearly see the progression from the bad flying in the beginning to the increased confidence at the end. I started too scared to boost for a long time to never letting go of the button. It feels rewarding to learn and master the skill. Plus with the additional maneuverability like the dodge and the banking, it both feels and looks awesome. Especially when you glide right between the sea stacks. There is a little jank to it. I'm not sure if it was just me or a genuine issue, but whenever I dive bombed, the character would turn around slightly, making me fly off in a different direction than anticipated. The flying isn't without its flaws, but compared to what else we have, it is the most in-depth system. It was genuinely fun to fly around the island for hours. Oh yeah, my favourite part of this game, the exploration. Not only can we fly around the village of Berk, but the entire island. Yes, those mountains that we see in the back of the film, we can go up there. From the rugged coastlines to the snowy peaks, we get a large, detailed map. There's the small dark caves, the sea stacks to adventure through, and the open ocean just to chill. I am truly Hiccup in this game. I feel like it says something about my engagement with these games, where I've only listed the gameplay mechanics in the review. A lot of matter of fact, whether or not this surface level gameplay was enjoyable to me, and if it's on brand with the theming of How to Train Dragon. But this delves into other aspects of intrinsic motivation for playing this game. It speaks to the inner child that wants their own dragon to explore the world with, and the game leans into this. as it encourages this experience by integrating challenges and collectibles around the map. Tokens are scattered around the island to be collected by every rider, apart from the unlockable ones. By doing this, it unlocks special abilities for each one. Toothless gets supersonic turning speeds, which is very much needed for their character since the beginning. Stormfly's shot range is increased, Hookfang can self-ignite upon contact with other riders, Meatlug's Lava Blast can shoot multiple riders at once, and Bath and Belch can create a large explosion of their fire on an aimed shot. Which, I guess is cool. These tokens are quite small and scattered everywhere on the island, and there's a good 50 or so to collect. But mercifully, the game does show the last few on the map, so you won't have to look up a guide. Some more collectibles are, check the view, just for landing on the platforms around the pretty areas. Mouth of Fire, light up all the statues dotted around the island. From this you can unlock the Stoic as a playable rider. Just head towards this cave entrance and find him flying there.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Light him up, light up all the torches around the island. Ice sculpting, fire out all the ice blocks and create statues. Light thief, nabbing a bunch of fireflies in the caves. Back to Berk, grab the lost sheep around the island and bring them back to the pen in Berk. And golden terrible terror, where you can catch the shiny critter. Do this for all 15 times, then fly up to the highest peak of the mountain and you'll find Volga and Cloud Jumper, but you haven't unlocked her yet. You must win the race against her. In my playthrough, I actually lost, and when I went to retry the course, they disappeared. I don't know whether or not that was intentional or a glitch, or if I rebooted it, it would have been fine. But either way, I spent hours doing that one task, so I just cheated her in for the sake of the video. The next set of challenges are flying based. Dragon Surfer, skimming the surface of the water. Very easy, you'll most likely complete this by playing the game. Commander of the Skies, set a flight time record. Honestly, I'm not sure what this entirely means. I thought it was the distance travelled around Berk thing. I still completed it without trying. Fearless Rider, perform dive bombs. Pretty self-explanatory. Watch your melons, fly under the sea stacks marked by these signs. This one is a very fun one. Likewise with Beard Trimmer, fly through all the small gaps marked with these arrows. Cave Dweller, fly through all the Berk's caves without crashing. Skydiver, fly around Berk and crash. Dizzy Rider, perform evasive spins, as well as Fire Breather with the RT to shoot fireballs. Untouchable, avoid attacks by spinning. Watch where you're going, kick another rider off their dragon in exploration mode. It's not actually needed, but this one feels the most appropriate, playing as Snotlout or the twins. And lastly, Like a Chief. Get a perfect score at every Blazing Shot event, which is a very easy achievement to do. Although I don't know why there's not any more challenges like come first in a dragon rally, or get the highest score in a dragon racing, etc. Oh, what is a dragon rally and a blazing shot? Well, I guess it's time to explain the main progression of the game. It's more bloody minigames. Yeah! The story, if you could call it that, is to prove that you are the best dragon rider by completing in the series of tournaments known as the Dragon Games. There are 4 sets, 2 categories in each, with 4 minigames in one and 3 in the other, which is a very convoluted way of explaining it. Wings of Berk, Meridian Misery, Thor's Playground, Crown of the Alpha. These are all sets of areas around Berk which you can participate in. In each are 2 categories, training, which includes Fire Chase, flying around the rings of fire around an area, Blazing Shot, an arcade shooting range, Dragon Spirit, fly through rings of fire around a course, and Sweep the Sheep, collect the sheep and kick them back into the pen. The other category is the tournament. The prior bunch you could do in any order, this one you have to do one after the other, but after you complete it, you can choose the order again. Warriors Rally, flying through rings against the other riders. I may have a few choice words for this game mode. Hot Shot, shooting a bunch of targets again. And Dragon Racing, flying through the course, picking up sheep and dumping them in your pen. Just like the movie. For this, just make sure you get the black sheep like twice and follow the course and you'll easily win. But the Warriors Rally, oh boy. It's like Mario Kart with dragons. You can even collect consumable items to help you in the race.
This could be bad!
Oh my god, this is just like Mario Kart but flying. This is so good. Though often I would find myself stuck if I was too far behind. You need to be close enough in order to slow down your opponent. And there's no catch-up mechanic like a bullet bill or a star or just tons of boosts that you get in Mario Kart. You're kinda just stuck there. Plus I got very upset over being smacked off my dragon whenever I would try to take over. Oh my, just typical Mario Kart. Oi! I'm being bullied.
I hope this works.
What? I was doing so well. I was like so far ahead. Now I'm already Solomon 5th. This is the most frequent game mode and my least favourite through just personal annoyances. Upon retrospect and removing my frustrations, it is great to see an expanded system of what some of the web games have done before. And the gameplay feels very How to Train Your Dragon. I can imagine the Dragon Riders playing these sort of games. All of these we have kind of seen variations of before, granted some are heightened with the fun fight mechanics, but these versions are a lot more fleshed out and more definitive, ultimately being the best types of racing gameplay out of all the other How to Train Dragon games. But it's disappointing how repetitive these games are across the franchise. But then again, there's probably limited options of what types of minigames you could do with the concept of dragons, whose primary ability are to fly and to breathe fire. By completing the tournaments with that rider, you'll unlock their racing stripes. This can be done for each rider, I think. I never actually committed to it. But the last thing to mention before moving on is listing the riders from worst to best. Honestly, they aren't too dissimilar to each other, and I think it really comes down to your own personal preference, but I'll try my best to rank them. In 7th place is Meatlug and Fishlegs. Despite being last place, they aren't actually bad at all, but I think it's just a little bit more of an aesthetic reason. I imagine this is supposed to be the rider for the easiest gameplay, as it kind of feels slowest and handle amazingly, though I'm not a big fan of their hitbox. On a slightly smaller side, which is great to avoid attacks, I guess, even though they're kind of homing, but it makes it slightly trickier to hit the rings. Though I will preference between pretty much all of these riders, they are borderline indistinguishable, and I could literally be making a lot of this stuff up. It's more of a gut feeling, I guess. Like what's in 6th place, Toothless and Hiccup. Despite me playing him for the most amount of time in this gameplay, and being my favourite set of characters, I did personally find it a little bit more frustrating to play as them on a technicality. Because Toothless is so fast, his handling doesn't quite catch up. But it is all resolved after you collect all the tokens and gain the extra handling ability. But even then I still slightly struggled, and you have to go through many hours of boring token collecting just to unlock it. In 5th place is Hookfang and Snotlout. This one and the next one is genuinely, I can't tell. I think Hookfang and Snotlout are slightly faster at going in a straight line, and because it is a slightly larger dragon, it does have more of an impressive reach. In 4th place I put Stormfly and Astrid. I thought I'd put these two in the middle, because they're just genuinely great all round. They seem to be pretty good at all areas of the mechanics, but don't specifically excel at anything. Skullcrusher and Stoic. Because the set is an unlockable one, I imagine they made it slightly better than the standard set. I found that they were fairly fast and had great handling despite their size, and also because of their size, I seem to manage to hit a lot of the targets. I don't know, when I first played them in a race, I seemed to win quite easily. Maybe it was luck, but maybe they're a good duo. In 2nd place is Stormcutter and Volker. This one was fairly tricky, as I literally just played them for like 5 minutes and then quit the game, because this was the last goal to get in my playthrough. And I don't think I played with her as best as I could, because by that time I was 8 hours in and tired and moody. But this is another instance of really great handling and large hitbox to hit all the targets stuff easily. Yay. Though I think because of their large size, they're slightly harder to see. I don't know, I just found them quite impressive. And in 1st place is Barf and Belch, Rough Nut and Tough Nut. Oh my gosh. Why is it always the Zipplebacks are in 1st place? It's kind of the same things as the previous game. They have surprisingly great handling. They're not the speediest thing in the world, but because everyone kind of has a similar speed, is not a massive hindrance. But it's just because of the shape of the dragon being extremely long, they have a great reach, and there's been cases where like just outside flying directly into the ring, but I twisted their neck into it and it just caught it. So yay, another Zippleback in 1st place. Woo! This game had many parts where it was just purely enjoyable, although you wouldn't tell in the stream for me complaining the whole time. I'm British.
It's an occupational hazard.
This game gets an A. If there was a main story and my sort of personal love, it would go up a grade, but alas, there isn't. There is a DS version of this game, but for what I can tell it's pretty much identical, perhaps cut down to fit onto the DS system, but because it's not drastically different like the previous DS version of the first game, I'm just gonna skip over it. I am knackered. Well, I think the whole stream I was knackered. Honestly, I mean, you can hear it in my voice that, like, that wasn't a great stream, but to be honest, from the beginning I was like, you know what, I'm tired. I went to bed really late as well last night, which didn't help, but I'm just like, I'm tired. I've been doing this all week. I'm not used to it, so I'm not a streamer. So the commentary was not good, and then also the type of game it was didn't sort of help it, as in there wasn't really a story. You could do when you want, what you want when you want, and it's sort of an exploration game, which for commentary you need like key story moments so you can make like, oh, this is the bit where I need to be funny, whereas where you're exploring the whole thing, I don't know, I have no idea how I'm even gonna edit it. Although there was that one bit in the middle of the stream where I kept on being, I was really kind of frustrated with the game. To be fair, I could have just switched character. But I think I sort of hit my limit. And then I think after that, I just didn't really do anything. I didn't speak, I just played the game. Which, boring for viewers, but I got through it, I guess. But I'm gonna go bed early, and for the next game, which is, well, School of Dragons! Whew. I did also boot up one of the other most prominent mobile games, Titans Uprising. Like before, I did start this playthrough at the beginning of the week, and then I'll show you the results / review nearest to the end of this challenge. To start, I just followed the tutorial, where matching the gems together defeats the enemy dragons. From that, I unlocked the baby Grunkle, just to add to my team, just fill it out slightly. Did the next few stages, where I learned like the 4 combination, and then doing the whole row. Wow, gameplay. From that, I then got the premium draft and unlocked Fang Hook. I believe this is all scripted. I level up a few dragons, proceed through the stages, and at this point I've unlocked the chest building, the hatchery, the fish, and the cash generators. Still playing through the stages until I reach the first boss, the Forever Wing. I did also do some grindy side event things, which I'll explain once we get into the review of the actual game, but that's kind of it for now. I just did like the first world and progression of the game. I put the game down as it was getting dark, and I got ready for the next game. School of Dragons. But wait, you started this challenge way after the game got shut down. How did you... Yeah, I don't know why I'm coping so hard to keep this format. I already streamed this game in 24 hours, so I'm going to be dropping all pretense of the structure. But yeah, School of Dragons. And, I don't really know how I can cover this. It was a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG for short, with a decade of added features and content, so I simply won't be able to cover everything in detail like I have in the last entries. In addition, my experience was very different from most. I played the bulk of it when it was shutting down, where they gave you a ton of gems and access to all the paid story quest lines, meaning I had full reign to anything I want, which made the experience a delight. Although I did play it briefly in the past, I even made some bad playthroughs back in the day. Hey, how's it going? My name is Norka, and welcome to School of Dragons. Burn it with fire! Ah! I think I gave up on it because the game confused me. Considering this is a children's game, I think that just spoke on my level of intelligence. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to be covering the core features and the main stories, integrating what I have learned from other people's experiences in the past to try and get a more holistic view of the game. But this game was fantastic. By all means, it has its flaws, and ones we will definitely get into, but this is the closest thing I think we could ever get to our dream How to Train Your Dragon game. You have a pretty extensive customization for your own Viking, having a selection of weapons and armors, flight suits, with references to specific parts of the film and the TV shows. It was really awesome to see obscure items from the franchise's history, even adding in their own versions which very much fits into the world. For example, I really like the Death Gripper dragon armor. The only aspects I could possibly wish more on was some more variety in the base model, like changing the body type to, instead of Hiccup, it could be more like Snotlout or Fish Legs, or perhaps there's other options in eyes, nose and mouth, etc. but this is being very nitpicky. One of the biggest draws to this game is that you could tame and train any dragon throughout the entire franchise, albeit missing a few, especially some of the background dragons from Dragons 2, but there's still over 70, each being quite accurate, especially with them having their unique firepower matching their powers in the other media. My only slight criticism is that it would be cool to have some dragons with extra abilities, like with the Death Song being able to use its Siren Call, or the Thread Tail, even though it's labelled as the Whole Grunt in this game, to secrete poison throughout its body. But there isn't really any like in-depth PvP or PvE in the overworld, which could utilise these to the fullest. There is another mechanic, but we'll get there when we get there. The controls are decent enough. It's nowhere near as complex as the How to Train Dragon 2 game, but from the sheer number of dragons, they kept them relatively simplistic, so it could work with all the species, which I think was a very smart move from the dev team. But you can move around freely in the sky, you can press shift to boost and that also enables a dive bomb. You can land your dragon and walk around. You can shoot fireballs by pressing the F key. There's even a shot limit included. I think this is the best representation of how the shot limit works in the show, being like a cooldown before you can fire X amount of times again. You can also customize your dragon, though this time I think it's the right amount. Having certain parts of the body you can change the colour of. But the only way I think you could improve upon this system is that you could draw your own patterns on the model. So you could truly have your own Night Fury OC, or OC of any dragon in this. But for what we got, it's pretty darn good. But that's not everything. You can add different types of saddles to your dragon, and also different types of paint. I used the Dragon Racing stripes on Toothless, and with a nice accent of orange with a purple skrill, oh, it just... mwah. Beautiful. Lastly, you can watch your dragon grow. You can get them as eggs which can be hatched in the hatchery, and after being leveled up from XP from quests or other minigames, they can grow into Broadwing, which is the adult form, where you could ride them. And then Titan Wing, which is like the elderly version of the species. Nothing really changes apart from their appearance, and sometimes the look of their firepower. It's more of a just aesthetic thing, but it's cool. There is a level of caring mechanics in this, which again is fantastic, though I do admit I didn't fully explore the feature as I was more focused on the main story, so I'm relying more on the wiki to fill in the gaps. But your dragon has a happiness meter and an energy level. The energy you can restore by feeding your dragon food, which you can fish for or farm for in a farmstead, or buy it in the store. Alternatively, you could just let them rest and they'll slowly regain their stamina. The dragon's energy is consumed by them doing activities like flying or picking up objects or running around the place. I never really found out what happens when the energy levels go to 0, as I always just kept it topped up. My best guess is that they just stop. My best guess is that they just stop moving and you can't ride them or whatever. The more impactful mechanic is the happiness meter. The extrinsic value of it lowering makes the dragon slower and more sluggish, grinding the gameplay down, which I did have to manage a couple of times. And of course the intrinsic value of seeing your dragon sad. I don't want my boy sad. The happiness feature, which sometimes is aggravating in how fast the mood drops, is great. Like, I don't think I could suggest a better system for this bonding and training with your dragon. The other biggest draw is the explorability. You have the potential to travel to prominent islands throughout the entire franchise, like Berk, The Edge, Dark Deep, Armorwing Island, Vanaheim, and new locations like Ice Storm Island, Impossible Island, and Auction Island, each one with some fascinating lore integrated. The maps are great, a little on the smaller side, and it would be cool to see some more detail, but it's hard to complain. We never really got the opportunity to explore our favourite locations in the franchise like this before. This is just leaving me wanting more, which I think is a good sign that the game is doing something right. I've seen fans create their own stories and narratives in these locations with their own dragons, and I could truly see the love that the fanbase had for this game, and the memories that were created here. Often I hear comments of people wanting another How to Train Dragon School of Dragons, and it's clear to see why. Though this is where I go into more of the negatives, because for a How to Train Dragon game, it's almost perfect. But for a game on its own merit, my gamer intuition is telling me that it isn't so great. Now, I must preference this. I have very limited understanding of MMOs. I've played very few of them, because when I look at them, they scare me. But once I got past the hype of owning my own dragons and exploring the landscapes, I quickly found the gameplay loop quite draining. It's a clicking and travelling sim. Yeah, most quest lines involves talk to this person, then go here, then go there, watch a mini cutscene, then go here. On occasion, you have to go and collect a certain amount of items, and go to this specific spot and chop down something. Multiple times we do go into a fight against dragon hunter ships, or defend bases and people, but there's never really any resistance. You as a player aren't attacked despite the health and energy system, and the loading between triggers ruins the pacing. You think you're gonna gear up and get ready for an epic fight, and it's just, great. Whoa. There are other times where it's a little more interesting, like avoiding detection from enemies, either dragons or dragon hunters, resulting in you needing to start over. Mechanics involved are very basic. It's not like more modern stealth games. You are shown the hitboxes where they can detect you and have a very obvious limited walking pattern. Other times the challenge equates to very basic platforming. The player character having a floaty jump is very indicative of a compromised mechanic, or one that is quite hastily stitched on. Like, this was the type of gameplay that I was creating at 16 years old while studying games design. And look where that diploma has gotten me, badly reviewing all the HTTYD Dragon games. But there was some times where it was genuinely quite fun. Notably, there was a moment within one of the campaigns where you could fight against a dragon hunter ship, and it was a continuous event with like HB bars and everything. But then other times they throw at you mobile game-esque puzzle mechanics. Yay! These mechanics that they throw at you constantly throughout the campaigns, some are, yes, a lot more fun and much more akin to what I would want from a How to Train Your Dragon game. Others are like complete brain rot. So yeah, the game suffers from a core gameplay loop that you can't sink your teeth into, as it has many multiple dumbed-down mechanics. Though the one I haven't mentioned quite yet is the main combat one, which admittedly does have a lot more to it, and that's the Dragon's Tactic. It reminds me of something like Baldur's Gate. You can move within the tiles and attack with a selection of moves at the bottom, taking it turns for your allies, which you do control, and your enemies. There are some features that are integrated into this, like I think some weapons you buy in the shop can change the type of attack and damage you do, but the moveset is very different between the dragons, which I personally find most interesting. Having your own dragon has that role-playing charm, and depending on which dragon you bring to the battle, having different types of abilities that correspond to that dragon. Like the Sentinels have their normal fire breath attack, and also have a wing blast, which you can both see in the show. And there's even cases of possible tiny extra lore tidbits, like the Squadron has an attack where it can poison its foe, and we know that the Squadrons have venom, so there's a possible theory that the Squadron could inject their venom into the boiling water they spew. Another good example are the Nightlights. Each of them pretty much have an identical moveset because they're more or less the same type of dragon, with the one extra move corresponding to the types of attacks they have in other media and is more linked to that character. For example, with Pouncer with the ability to blind their enemies, stunning them for a turn. I think even in Rise of Berk, that similar idea is utilised in that game. Roughrunner causes his enemies to focus in on him for 3 turns, and Dark can inspire herself, removing all the negative effects and giving the additional buff of crit on that current turn. There are stats involved, but clearly from me not mentioning any of it, it's really not that important. There is the element there where you could geek out and microanalyze and optimize for the best team, but it's clearly not necessary, as I was easily able just to steam through the whole game. But I can't ignore the potential for it to be great. What it's worth, I did enjoy it, and it was the most engaging mechanics outside the exploration or the dragons themselves. But I would say implementing it feels a little odd. You have some elements where you're controlling your own character and your dragons in the 3D environment, kind of like a typical action game, and then all of a sudden you're forced into a stylized battling mechanic. It's just a little jarring, but not inherently bad. Although for a How to Train Your Dragon game, I think I would prefer a more action-based combat. It'll be nice to react to attacks and fire with your own dragons in real time. But I should say that Dragon Tactics are technically an example of mini games throughout this game. And of course, it can't be a How to Train Your Dragon game without a bunch of them. Once you head to the training grounds, there are a bunch of minigames that you can participate in, and honestly I can't really complain about more content in these games, but sometimes they are forced integrated into the main storyline, which I guess serves as an introduction as, hey, you can also do this. But compared to the entire minigame history of this franchise, these are sort of similar to the How to Train Dragon 2 games, and are a lot of fun. But once again, they suffer from repetitiveness, which isn't really an issue for the game itself, because not everyone's going to be playing every single other How to Train Dragon game, but it's more of an issue for me, because I am sick and tired of racing through rings and firing at targets. But it does have a much more additional charm with having your own dragon there. I'm going to be referring to the wiki to cover any bases and any minigames that I missed. So we've already covered the dragon tactics in a fair amount of detail, so we can move on to the others. There's the stable missions, which I'll get into when I talk about the stables. Fireball Frenzy, once again, we've already talked about in like the web games. But this version we can have your own character and dragons, so that's cool, but I don't think you actually get any distinct advantage with the type of dragon you have. It's just a visual flair. The Flight Club, and this is one I can talk about a bit more because I haven't talked about it already, but it's like a super common one. You fly through rings around a course, fastest time gets the biggest score. Thunder Drum Racing, I did play this, but the footage cut out right as I started playing it, but the goal was to get to the flag on the other side of the course as quick as possible. You can pick up items to help you and collect certain objects to give you bonus points. The fastest time is the highest score. And then there's some extra ones, like battle events. There's like a Viking or Dragon Hunter ship outside the training grounds, and you can fire at them, you take damage and whatever. You could do it in the lobby, and you get rewards if you destroy it. It's taking that moment in the campaign and turning it into a little minigame thing. I wish there was more of this, because this is kind of fun. In the Secret of the Leviathan expansion pack, there are a couple of more minigames. The first one is Cogs. It's introduced throughout the campaign, but you can play more of it in the minigame bits. But the visuals are pretty self-explanatory. You have a set amount of cogs that you need to put in a certain order to make them spin. This is just brain rot mobile gameplay tier little minigame. Likewise with the Incredible Machine. It's a weird name, despite all you have to do is just get this ball into this basket. Sometimes you have to place down a crate or put down these weird platforms or have like a weird bottle thing go across the screen. You can collect 3 stars. Yeah, this is just another mobile game-esque minigame. They're functional but incredibly boring and really not How to Train Dragon themed like at all. I never actually did the eel roast, but I have seen footage of this and used footage for videos. It kind of reminds me of like Fruit Ninja. I think you just have to shoot the eel, so it's still pointing and clicking with your mouse, so still not really that inventive, nor too different from, honestly, just Fireball Frenzy. There is like the weird alchemy stuff during the campaign, but I can't tell if that's a minigame or not. You do a vast selection of things. You have a little pouncer there guarding you. He does interact with whatever you have to do. I did like this though. It was a little bit scientific and a little bit more interactive. And you have a cute little dragon there watching, so yay! Education! Speaking of, there's a lot of integrated mechanics like questionnaires and quizzes for like primary school science questions, or maybe like secondary school, which gameplay wise, especially as an adult, isn't engaging, but it's hard to knock educating kids in an entertaining way. Like, oh no, the How to Train Dragon community is getting educated about science, and science is cool. By the looks of it, it draws upon a lot of the experimentation that Hiccup and even sometimes Fish Legs did within the show. So great connections to the How to Train Dragon franchise and quite fun little puzzle thing despite it telling you exactly what to do. But it's interesting and quite unique as we have never had any minigames like this. Moving on to other mechanics, there is the Hideout. This is a place where you could decorate, have a dragon on display, and have friends come over and, I don't know, hang out, I guess. This was originally only purchasable through gems, or slightly cheaper for members, but in 2020, and by the time I got to it, it was free. Though it can only be accessed through Dragon's Edge and Berk, and you need to unlock those places, thus needing to unlock the expansion pack, which is still costs money in gems or whatever. And whilst it's cool decorating your own place and having a lot of How to Train Dragon theming items in there, like I love having a bunch of Toothless's tail strapped on the wall. I kind of want that in real life. But after that, it seems fairly shallow. By the looks of it, that's all you could sort of do. And there's no other additional mechanics like perhaps sleeping or additional interactions with your dragons or purchasing extra items in the store which can give extra buffs or bonuses to your dragons. I'm sure there's a bunch of mechanics that you could add that could integrate it a little bit more seamlessly to the rest of the experience. I just can't really think of it at the top of my head. I unfortunately never really delved into the mechanic, I just completely missed it. So a lot of this is based on the appearance of what other people have witnessed and talked about. Likewise with the farm. This is another area where you can decorate and invite your friends round, but it does have a much more functional aspect to it, where this is a much more reliable way of restoring your dragon through the produce that you produce, either through specific plants or animal products. rather than fishing a million times, which has its own slight minigame to it, which that alone is a little bit time consuming and especially disruptive if you just want to focus on playing the game. And it avoids the players having to go to the shop just to buy the produce instead, so they can keep more of the rewards or even money that they spend on the game for more cooler things like, I don't know, getting new dragons? These concepts are cool and fun, but it is a little bit disconnected from the rest of the game, as you have to specifically press a different tab just to go to them. It would have been cool to connect to some of the stables that you owned and integrate some of that feature within this, though there is a platform for the active dragon that you have out, which does change the colour of the building, which is a cool little detail. There's even a possibility of having like a clan house, which would have been cool. You can join clans, maybe having a customizable building, kind of similar to a great hall where you could go into and see your other friends or other clan members in there, like at any time, if they're in there, of course. Where you can have aspects of role-playing, like meetings, or participate in some extra mini-games to do with like the Dragon Eye, or perhaps have a version of Maces of Talons that you could play with your friends. I don't know, the possibilities are kind of endless, and it's kind of a shame that it ends at just, hey look, it looks cool. In a kind of similar vein, we do have the stables, which is the primary place where you store all of your dragons. They have a weird mobile idle sim mechanic, sending your dragon out, waiting hours for them to return for resources, so okay. But you can see your dragon resting there, and having different theming for the stables is really fun. But again, if they expanded on this, it could just be so much more awesome. Like, if you could clean your dragon or interact with them. But again, it could be a little nitpicky. The Bewilderbeast stable's like extra cool because there's a full-blown model of the Bewilderbeast there. And in that one, you can activate 3 abilities. The fish spray gives you a random assortment of extra fish, which you could feature dragons with. You can get like a mystery chest, but I have no idea what items are in there. It's probably just like a little reward thing. And lastly, there's Alpha Rally, which gives your dragons double XP for a couple of hours, which is cool buff. But here are some 2 really big negatives about this game. The bugs and the predatory business practices. The bugs are kind of self-explanatory. The game is glitchy, oh boy. Enough to really bring down the experience. From honestly quite funny scenarios, to small inconveniences, to quite aggravating experiences, to really large problems. Personally, I didn't run into too many, and the issues I found could be the result of increasing player rate as the game was shutting down, but I did get kicked out a few times and had to wait ages to get back in. But I have heard from content creators and other people that this has been a continuous persistent issue throughout the game's life. And there's other elements like triggers or quest lines not working, which I've had to reset the areas for it to work. Some of the graphical glitches I came across were more funny than anything. They didn't disrupt the gameplay too much, but graphical glitches do have a slight problem within themselves as they do break the immersion. But compared to other issues like actual game crashes, it's kinda minor. The other biggest issue I found is the premium currency system. They encourage FOMO and locking quite a lot of content behind paywalls. I get it, this is a business and it needs to earn money somehow, though ironically one of the reasons why it shut down was they weren't earning enough money. Example would be when I start one of the expansion quest lines, you're not told straight away that this will be paid content. You have access to the first couple of quests, you can follow along with them, and then all of a sudden there's a paywall. And the story that you're invested in and you're following is locked behind a group of gems which you can purchase at the store. I think either from the start say that it's a paid DLC or give it for free for players, not a mix of both. In stores, you know, you have your premium currency gems where you could buy all your favourite items with. However, all the stuff in the store was all like aesthetic and not pay to win. It's just stuff that looks good. As far as I'm aware, that's why it's a little bit more fine. Although there is the alternative of memberships where you pay a subscription each month to access all the bonus story content and some extra bonus features. I'm personally not a big fan of subscription models, and the price you pay with sometimes the quality of the game that you're playing isn't really worth it. School of Dragons is available on many platforms, like PC and mobile, which is where I think some of the issues stem from. Because the game had to be on mobile, especially in the 2010s era, there of course would be a lot of limitations that would have to be placed onto the game, thus impacting the performance and experience of the whole. But vice versa, having it available on mobile does have a lot of positives, as it makes it far more accessible to the general audience, and especially ones whom are younger. Most adolescents at this point would have a mobile phone, but less of them would have a personal laptop or PC, as, yeah, they're a lot more money. Moving on, I do have to admit I am unsure of the base game, if that has substantial content. I did originally play the full base game in the previous version, but that ultimately just served as an introduction to all the mechanics in the game, which is effective, but there's no story to it. The more modern version, or the version it was before it got shut down, I didn't manage to explore. I did have a brief look online, and I don't think it's too dissimilar to what it was in the past. But I do think the main core of the game are the DLCs, as they're the ones who have the stories. And because the game was shutting down and I had very limited time, I did just stick to them. But speaking of the main game and good stuff and expansion packs, you know, let's do a little compliment sandwich here. The story and the lore is fantastic. Personally for me, this is my favourite aspect of this game. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail on the review, not for spoilers reason, because the game, again, is dead. But this review is also long enough, and pretty much all of the lore details and stuff like this, I will definitely expand upon in videos, and oh, I can't wait to do the lore videos. Oh my god. This is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video now, is to establish, okay, games have interesting lore in the How to Train Your Dragon universe. I'm gonna like briefly list some little things. So there is like a new villain, which is Nikora Stormheart. She's similar to Vigo, that in the sense of that she is primarily a businesswoman. But she has an interesting backstory, and there's also connections with her and other games, like the next game I'm going to be talking about. There's also Harold Forkbeard, which is an interesting fella. He's technically an antagonist. I keep on going on like hyperfixation rabbit holes and finding the most niche information and theories, and it's, oh, I can't wait to share them all. They also implement like a Dragon Cry, which is kind of similar to the Dragon Eye. Instead of like visionary stuff, it's hearing stuff. That and a character called the Archaeologist ended up in the graphic novels. So technically, they are definitely up there in canonicity. He's a guy, I think, that like left Berk before they befriended dragons, and then they met him on Ice Storm Island. And the story for these expansion packs do fit in with the How to Train Your Dragon timeline, for the most part. The last couple, like the ones that set place within the hidden world, doesn't work, for obvious reasons. But there are still some tiny story bits and moments which you could headcanon slightly adjust them and it would work in the timeline. I'm going to be doing so much coping if I ever do a timeline video of this franchise. And there are some really fascinating connections to the wider lore. Like, we've seen hybrids throughout the franchise in School of Dragons and Rise of Berk and Titians Uprising, and there could be a possible link to their origins here as well, which again I'll explain when I finally talk about the hybrids. Oh, you can hear my voice, I'm so excited. There is a lot of connections and lore and detail, and for the most part it works incredibly well within the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, and I can't wait to get into it. S tier, this game makes you feel like a dragon rider. You have your dragon, it gives you the freedom, accompanied with the MMO genre. You have so much you could do and explore. I think it's the closest we'll ever get to our dream How to Train Your Dragon game, in my opinion. We just have to look past the major issues, unfortunately. But before we move on, I think I'm going to rank all the expansion packs, and I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity to talk about them like this in this context. But I also should note, and I think I regret actually, when I was playing the School of Dragons, I did just beat it as quick as I could, so I kind of just skimmed through the entire story. I did get the gist of what was happening, but there's a lot of details and especially lore tidbits which I completely missed out on. So I may one day actually just download the reincarnated version of this game and actually just play it properly and read the text and properly absorb it. But I'm going to do it like slowly and passively and not focus so much on needing to complete it within a certain time span. The game was shutting down, I kind of panicked. Which in retrospect for this has hindered the potential review or analysis or opinions. So this is all very much subject to change, as I will eventually revisit it. But for now, we have 10 expansion packs to rank. Woo, top 10 list, yay! And honestly, this was quite hard to do. Starting at number 10, we have The Curse of the Hobgobbler. This is more of a post-story expansion, so there is very little lore. Perhaps some wrap-ups with like some side characters who I've completely forgotten about. I think there was a dragon that turned into a Titan wing, and it just ended up being a bit like silly, which is cool and fine, I have no problem with, but compared to the rest of them with, you know, cool stuff happening, That's why it's here. I do like silliness, don't get me wrong, but ultimately the gameplay just boiled down to doing lots of puzzles with the different hobgobblers. You get hobgobbler armor, then you have like the different hidden world puzzles like gliding and pushing the hobgobblers so you can do some parkour, and then you're climbing a wall. Then there's the maze with the speed stingers, and then there's a bit of a platforming and climbing and gliding segment. And it's just like, why are we doing this? And I can't help there's a slight missed opportunity, as because the game shut down early, we did get to see some of their planned future release, or you know, where the story was ultimately going. And although I can't expect the developers to have the hindsight of knowing when their game's going to be shut down, but I feel like if you're going to wrap up one of the biggest mystery of your story, you should have done it sooner rather than later, because the Curse of the Hobgoblin is just kind of filler, you know? Like, it would have been good to have the reveal of the big Leviathan and see Lumi actually grow up into that big state, because now unfortunately all this is just relegated to some pictures. You do get a Hobgobbler at the end of this though, which is quite funny. How can you ride on that dragon? Number 9 is The Hidden World. This one basically just follows the very similar storyline to the actual movie, which is fine and fun. A lot of action and cool stuff goes on, especially with some of the conflict with Harold and then Nikora Stormheart, you know, integrating them more into the wider House of Green Dragon lore with connections to Grimoire and the other warlords. However, the reason why I put it so low is, like, unfortunately, this does mean that it's pretty non-canon. In order to incorporate the Stormheart story, we're going to have to sort of rip segments or sections out of this story and headcanon it and slightly retcon it to make it make sense in the House of Green Dragon timeline. Because there are plenty of elements that do work, it's just because they integrate it with an already established story within the canon, there's going to be more work. Similarly to that, there is the Age of the Nightlights, which is definitely another completely non-canon. We see the Nightlights grow up into their teen years and they're doing weird quest stuff in the archipelago rather than actually them living and thriving within the hidden world. What we got was pretty cool, you know, Dart interacting with the Green Death, Rough Runner with the Bewilderbeast, and Pouncer being cheeky with like the Warlords or the other, like, you know, Stormheart's like enemies, and then hanging out with Lumi on the Leviathan Island, or Titanwing Island, I should say. Possible lore connection there. But I did put this slightly higher on the list because there is a kind of a canon event in the fact that the Stormheart ship does get destroyed in this. But once again, if we want to include the Stormheart story, we're really going to have to rip exclusively the Stormheart section and keep it contained in its own timeline, which I think will work. I'm not solely against these. I do wish they kind of separated the main story from these non-canon epilogues. And I'm definitely not against like having a little story about the Nightlights and growing up or whatever, because it is fun. It is fun to explore. Next, I'm going to put like Call of the Death Song. This is where the list started to get really hard. It just does feel like a Dragon Race to the Edge or Dragon Riders of Berk episode. You have a Death Song attacking Berk, and then you have to deal with cleaning up and stuff with the dragon lenses and using Tornado to help fight the Death Song to chase it away from Berk. And you do get the Death Song as a result of this, which is cool. But I put it so low because it was kind of short and really not much lore stuff happened, and also it does slightly not work with the canon because, I don't know, you're having the mystery of the Dragon Rider, which we already know is Heather, and they had that in Race to the Edge. Also, how to deal with the Death Song Amber was also in Race to the Edge, despite in this expansion pack you have to figure that out as well. I don't know, I much prefer these expansion packs to be like additional stories rather than sort of the same stuff that we've already had in other media. Next, I'm putting Ice Storm Island. This one is quite an important expansion pack, as this is the first one and it sets up a bunch of the main story elements. This is where we meet the archaeologists. There's a lot of hint to like some extra little lore tidbits, and this is where we find like a weird armor set and dragon lens, which will be super cool to delve into. Like, this is a ancient civilization and connections with the Gromsicle. Speaking of, you do get that dragon, which is cool. My main issue with this is that it's very long and there's so many filler quests. Like, you do stuff with Speed Stingers and you have a bit with Mildew. So this part is very interesting and I can't wait to delve in further. Slap bang in the middle, we have the Rise of Stormheart. This one's an extremely action-based one with a triple strike attack on the edge. I think it was under the influence of the Glamora parasites. And you go to the Stormheart ship for a confrontation, and then the Stormhearts attack the edge, and then you retaliate. You do get a triple strike at the end of this. Love a triple strike. Not too much lore, but this is the meat of the story and lots of combat and fun action. Very similarly, we have the Wrath of Stormheart, which is basically just a follow-up of the previous expansion. But I rank it slightly higher because there's some a tad bit more interesting stuff going on. Like, we return back to Vanaheim. When this takes place in the possible timeline, this could be after How to Train Your Dragon 2, and thus this is the last time we see Vanaheim in the main storyline, if we include this. But this is where the action sort of peaks, as their retaliation is on Berk instead of the Edge. And at the end of this, you get a free Sentinel, which I love that dragon. An Elder Sentinel, to be more specific. This is where I really struggled, like, deciding which ones I want. I put the Secret Leviathan here because it's really lore dense, which I absolutely love, especially with the possible connections with Lumi and what's going on there with a new secret, like, Alpha Dragon, going to a possible island and meeting the Flame Whippers. They're quite a cool dragon. And you go inside these ruins and it feels very Indiana Jonesy. And you get a Flame Whipper. That little, like, baby dragon thing you first meet, you end up partnering with them, and it's like, oh, it's very cute. But I had to rank it a little bit lower than I probably would have preferred, because the actual gameplay itself is a little bit boring. It's just a bunch of puzzles and platforming, and those damn cogs and machines. There is very little combat within this. Next is the return to Dragon Island. The first half of this expansion pack is literally just getting to Dragon Island. There's a lot of puzzles and talking to people, and you have to, like, grab all the ingredients to create a compass and a map just to get there, which I found a little bit repetitive and it took quite long. But once you're there, it is fun. You see the skeleton of the Red Death and you meet another alpha dragon of the Green Death that is taking over the place. And then you bring in the Whispering Deaths. You also get a Raptidon. You get 2 dragons in this. A Singe-Tail to help with the signal flares just to get to the island. And then a Raptidon to deal with stuff on the island. You're trying to get the egg, which does hatch in this right at the end. And also you get the Dragon Cry, the little tidbit at the end. I think this is where we first see it. And lastly, I put the Battle for the Edge, which, to be honest, I didn't actually think I was gonna do, but in retrospect, a lot of fun things happen. Because it's edge-based, it very much feels like a Race to the Edge episode, and the constant reveals of all the islands within Race to the Edge, or at least the prominent islands, makes it feel like you're going on a grand adventure across the archipelago. You know, you get to go to Dark Deep, Armorwing Island, and there's a couple of new ones with, like, the Zipperback Island, or the Holgrunt Island, Mudraker Island, which, you know, archaeologist tames a Mudraker. You have to deal with a Skrill and a Scuttlecore Island. It feels like a bunch of Race to the Edge episodes all in one. And there's a nice bit of the main story. This is where you meet Harold, and where Harold betrays you with the end of the expansion with a big assault on the Edge. Very similar to what Vigo would do. And this is where we also reveal the special egg, and we see Harold go off with it. But we do get a cool armor wing, so that's awesome as well. Yippee! Oh, yeah, so School of Dragons, a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, but hey, it was mostly fun. There was a lot of key aspects that I personally really enjoyed about it, but fortunately enough for me, because really, you know, I never really played the game properly when it was out. I only experienced the phone going off. I only experienced it when the game was shutting down, so a lot of the pay-to-win aspects or the annoying perks was just not there. Oh. Sorry, it's just random. But for the little experience I did have, I personally enjoyed it for what it was. But for now, what's next? What is next? Dawn of New Riders. But not just yet. Because I've covered everything else, I might as well cover the How to Train Your Dragon games that aren't web games, nor mobile games, nor console games. Just the miscellaneous section. Cause oh yeah, when I say I'm ranking every single How to Train Your Dragon game, I mean it. But thankfully there's only like a few here, but some of them are interesting. Back in the 2010s, a brand new genre of games took the world by storm, called Toys to Life. If you weren't around in this era, the basic gimmick is that you'll go to the store and buy these plastic toys statue things. The game will come with a portal that you can plug into your console, and it can scan your figures, bringing literally the toys to life in your video game. Wow. I was a kid a decade ago, and I certainly partook. To the detriment of my wallet. Well, I should say my parents' wallet, actually. A lot of the big brands followed suit, and to capitalise on this big market, a brand called Heroes Portal Plug-in and Play was made. In this version, the console itself was kind of like the game system, and all you had to do was plug it into your TV, and it would come with a controller, so it's all a one-and-done package. But of course, they still sold the various character statues that you can collect, which you could switch between in the game. And one of the franchises they officially licensed was How to Train Your Dragon. So there's a How to Train Dragon branded portal and a controller, though this isn't really a custom job, this is just like replace the stock art. And you have a selection of action figures, which is just the main sort of cast. Apart from Skullcrusher, I think. I don't know why that dragon isn't there. But these look incredibly cheap. And the game itself isn't too dissimilar. It's practically identical to a lot of the web browser games that we've just covered before, with slight variations within them. Would you want to fly up and down and shoot at the enemy dragons whilst it auto-scrolls? Would you want to fly side to side and shoot enemy dragons as it auto-scrolls? Would you want to sit still in the middle and shoot enemy dragons as they come at you? Or would you just want to shoot enemy dragons with sheep and then fire the incoming ships? Or would you want to basically have Flappy Bird? I wish I was joking. Rinse and repeat these game modes for all 6 stages of the game, until you get to the final boss, which is Drago's Bewilderbeast, in a lava zone. Yeah, this game is very inaccurate to the lore, but it kind of reminds me of Cuphead, where you're just constantly shooting at the enemy PNG. Once you do that enough, it'll be defeated and die, and you win the game, hooray! You can break blocks or collect those tokens scattered around the stages. I'm not too sure what they're for. I presume you can spend them in a shop and perhaps increase your dragon stats by unlocking new abilities, perhaps increasing the HP. I don't know. I'm so tired. Whilst it's funny seeing dragons having a little bit of a stint in the Toys to Life genre, the novelty very quickly wears off as the gameplay is very generic and identical to practically everything we've seen before. On to the next one. Dragon's Adventure World Explorer. I mean, technically this is a mobile game, so I probably should have lumped this into that section, but oh no, I'm here now. Oops. It's a Windows Phone exclusive, but it uses real-world map data and points of interest for you to fly to, where you have a set amount of tasks to complete.
All I need to do is just type in the city that I'm traveling to, and I'm just going to do Flemington right now. What's happening right now is the map is being transformed. So this is Night Fury right now, and we can go ahead and start driving.
Oh, cool. It's Pokemon Go before Pokemon Go. At these points of interest, it looks like you can collect a bunch of sheep or items, and or you can attack the different towers. I'm not too sure on the gameplay, and I don't know if I particularly care to find out the details. The game is shut down, and it didn't look all that interesting. The real world aspect kind of confuses me because the game itself doesn't seem to use any real world things, unless the point of interests are mapped to real life points of interest. But at that point, just make a set amount of point of interest in the game, because you're going to run into issues like what Pokemon Go does, where there's nothing for any players who are rural compared to city folks. I didn't anticipate this video to take this long to create, and within that time a new Dragons game released, alongside the live action movie. One of which is How to Train Dragon Riders of the Sky, which is another TV game. You have to get like a camera thing, and you have to do motion controls with your body, like you're riding on a saddle, which is kind of cool. Reminds me a lot of like the Kinect on Xbox. I have a gut feeling though that the controls will be awful. By the looks of it, you can pick one of the main dragons, and you're flying around through rings and shooting targets and all of the same stuff we've seen in everything else. And it looks like garbage as well. This released in like 2025 and it looks like a 2000s game. Anyway, there's not much more to comment on. And lastly, there is the VR experience, DreamWorks Dragons Flight Academy. I mean, it's kind of debatable whether or not this is a game or not, because this is like a VR experience, but to be honest, I'm never going to be able to talk about this like in any other setting, so I'm just slapping it in this video. But this is actually written by Richard Hamilton, so canonicity-wise, you know, okay, we're paying attention now. This whole segment wasn't a waste of time. By the looks of it, it takes place between 2 and 3, maybe just before 3, as Berk is starting to build up and have that recognisable, colourful landscape, and we know that some of the other dragon riders have some of the armour, like Astrid. Hey yo, new dragon armour? Honestly, the look of this looks really cool, and I really wished I experienced this. And some of the dragons that you play with are actually kind of unconventional. You have some of the random background dragons like Frickleboggle, Thornrage and Threadtail. But story-wise, we follow up on Drago's Bewilderbeast. He's been seen in perhaps a demo version that he's like smashing a ship in half, and I guess he's like hanging out in a cove area. And I know you do go into the hidden world in this, though not the most canon thing, but this could be the slight tie in how Drago's Bewilderbeast went from Berk to the hidden world. I've always been a little bit curious what that dragon does kind of after it got defeated in the second movie. Like, did it carry on causing chaos? Did it just flee and just naturally went to the hidden world? If anyone has experienced this VR, please sound off in the comments and tell me all about it. I want to know like every detail, especially with the Bewilderbeast. Yeah, once more, I'm just gonna lump all of these together and put them in F tier. Not too many connections to lore, and most of the gameplay is identical to what we've seen in everything else. I should also preference this. In this video, I'm not talking about the collaborations, like with a bunch of DreamWorks characters in like the Karts games, and the add-ons in Minecraft and Roblox. We're just talking about specifically How to Train Dragon video games. However, I will cover them eventually in a sequel video, just about collaborations. There's quite a few of them, but it won't be nearly as big as this. Thank God. Here we have my new personal favourite game. You can kind of guess where this is going to be placing. Dawn of New Riders. Releasing in 2019 alongside How to Train Dragon the Hidden World on all the typical consoles and PC platforms you would expect from a modern game. Ignore that 2019 is 7 years ago. And this is the most video game out of all the video games here. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the most polished, the most stereotypical in gameplay, and has some of the most interconnection with its mechanics. One of the ways it achieves this by being one of the shortest games to play and complete on this list. I kid you not, it took under 8 hours to play and never touch this game again. However, it was the most pleasant to play. So is having lots of content with half-baked mechanics better, or is having a smaller experience with less mechanics that are far more streamlined? Well, we're going to be exploring the latter for this game. I guess I'll start with my favourite aspect, the story. This was written by Richard Hamilton, whom I've mentioned before, so in terms of canonicity, you know, it's on the same level with everything else that he's written. And it fits in with the wider lore and timeline perfectly, meaning this does fill out more of the time between How to Train Dragon 2 and 3, and also connecting some of the wider loose threads amongst the other media. This is awesome to see. As someone who loves diving into the lore of this world, it's super fascinating. I won't go into the details of the story itself to allow you to have a chance to play it, or you could just watch my full playthrough of the game. But I enjoyed it myself. This was the game that I was most emotionally invested in. The main character Scribbler hasn't got much depth to him, unfortunately, mainly because he's suffering through amnesia throughout the story, with his main motivation piecing it back together, figuring out the events that just transpired before the game started. I found this not too thrilling, as to be honest, you could just make an educated guess on what happened, and you'll be quite close. It's How to Train Dragon. At this point in the franchise, it's never going to deviate too much from what we've seen before. I do find that some questions were left unanswered, like his actual name. Scribbler was a nickname given by Hiccup as he couldn't remember it, and some extra context of Scriven Rock, his home island. Like, whereabouts is it? What is the culture like there? Or anything about the village other than it has a lot of ancient tomes and writings? I think this is more of a testament of how much I do actually like Scribbler. His personality is quite charming, and has aspects to his backstory that are interesting, like his potential historical or cultural knowledge, or the fact that he's a new dragon rider outside of Berk. I just wish there was more, really. The biggest interest is in the new dragon, Patch. You learn pretty quickly that he's a hybrid dragon, and the species name is Chimeragon, named after the Greek chimera, which is a bunch of animals stitched together. And we have that in this dragon, resulting in him having 3 abilities: ice, lightning, and fire. He's also a dragon that ages incredibly fast, as in within a week he is a Titan Wing. There is another ability which delves into heavy spoilers, so just like skip 10 seconds forward if you don't want to hear it. But he has like a phoenix-like ability, like as soon as he dies he gets reborn into an egg and hatches again, which is incredibly unique. There is of course a mystery around this dragon, like who created Patch and why? How do we stop his rapid aging? But once again, my main criticisms are, I wish we got a little bit more, like which dragons were used to make Patch. I do believe this was purposefully left out and left ambiguous as Richard never responded to it on Twitter, but I do wish it was sort of answered within the game, or have enough context clues for you to figure it out. Like, we can guarantee one of them, which is the Night Fury. Patch does have the iconic toothless-like head, ear flap things, And when you first meet the villain, there is a drawing of the Night Fury on the table, and the villain that she works with specializes in hunting a very specific species down, so... But what makes up the ice and fire abilities, we have no clue. Which I do find kind of disappointing. Perhaps there were context clues, but I just completely missed them. He does have a feather texture on him, so if you find dragons that match those characteristics, leave your theories in the comments below, because I would like to hear them. But with the involvement of a Night Fury, does lead to some interesting theories. The main villain herself, Air Stormheart, I think is interesting, and I think one of the better villains in the franchise. She's the most sympathetic, with trauma from her past, resulting in her vengeance and conviction now. She has links between other villains across the different medias, having a form of relationship with Grimmel, Drago, and her sister Nikora Stormheart, which you know from her appearance in School of Dragons. Honestly, I can't wait to explain all of this in videos. But before I go on a massive hyperfixation rant about the lore, it's best that I move on to the actual gameplay. And the game is made up of 3s, 3 islands, 3 parts in each, and 3 fire powers and tools to help navigate through them. As Patch ages throughout the game, he gains ice, lightning, and fire abilities. When Patch first hatches from the egg, he has an ice breath, used to freeze water so you can walk across. Wow, a really puzzling puzzle there. It is minus mechanic, but as this is a way to introduce everything, it's kind of more forgivable. But in later levels, it is used to cool down heated blocks for Scribbler to smack, so it does come back. When used on an enemy, however, it gives an additional frozen effect, slowing their movement. Once you complete the first island, Patch grows into a broad wing and gets a lightning shot. This is used to shoot the totem pillars, which activate whatever it is for the puzzle, whether it's a bridge, magnets to move the blocks, whatever. In addition, when used on an enemy, it gives it a paralysis effect, preventing the enemy from attacking and moving. After completing the second island, Patch becomes a Titan Wing, gaining the Fireball, burning the enemy, doing tick damage over time if landed, and it's also used to burn your way through the thick fog and Dragon Vine on the last island. Though you could use Scribbler's tools as well, which is a little weird, it just removes one of the points of the new mechanic. I don't know. Speaking of, Scribbler has a wide variety of equipment as well for players to navigate the world with. I should say that you can switch between Scribbler and Patch using the spacebar or probably another button on another controller. It's quite quick and simple, it's nice. Anyway, when you first go on an adventure, you get a shield and an axe. The shield is simple, hold down right click which blocks incoming attacks, whether it's a spear launcher or an enemy dragon trapper. The axe is used to chop down trees and is a decent attack for combat. Once you get to the first ruin, you get the hammer, which is a slower attacker, but I presume it hits harder. I don't know, I didn't use it. I just used it for the intended puzzles, smacking the blocks into place. Finally, once you get to the second island, you get a sword, which is possible to miss. It isn't a mandatory tool, but it does make the best weapon for combat. This has the fastest attack speed and the highest damage. This does lead me to the rest of the combat mechanics, as I've already half explained them, but yeah, regular click is attack. Holding this down allows you to do a big swing for extra damage. This also does work for Patch's fire powers. I do like it as it's a bit of a risk-reward situation for trying to do more damage in one go, but it does take longer to build up. Landing this though is very satisfying. There is also the dodge roll, so you have options to avoid attack as well. You do get a Dromelian Horn, where you summon a dragon you freed throughout your journey, feeling like you're making a difference and having direct gameplay results for your hard work. Whilst this is a neat concept, it is just an auto nuke button, trivializing many combat encounters you come across, removing what I found the most enjoyable part of the game. So I didn't really use it all that much. But if you unlock everything, you do end up with 5 dragons, with varying effects and abilities, which I'll rank at the end of the review for funsies. You do also get a helmet, but it just helps block some damage, nothing too much of note. On your travels, you pick up resources by smashing your environment or opening chests scattered throughout the island, which can be used to craft and upgrade your equipment at the forge, making them do extra damage. The last upgrade gives you an additional effect, but you will need to get a specific item from completing some side islands, which we'll get back to. You can craft a frost sword, applying the frozen effect after a hit, paralyze an axe, paralyzing the enemies, and a burning hammer, applying the burning effect. Honestly, most of these are self-explanatory. There are also 2 sets of armor and shields. One shield mainly blocks physical attacks, and the other elemental. Likewise with the 2 shirts. The helmets either boost movement speed, which feels kinda redundant. I think it's already a nice pace, so the one boosting charge attack damage is the one that I preferred. Plus it looks cooler. You have a dragon head. I should mention that the forge is located at the main base of operations, Havenholm. The place was built as an additional base for the riders, and it serves as a retirement place for some dragon species. Here you can see all the dragons you freed. You can also buy healing and boosting foods in speed, attack, and defense from Astrid. She also does appear like midway through island sections and towards the end of the boss fight, so you know, you do have easy access to the shop. It's a really cute place with some interesting implications, as it's located near Volker's sanctuary. I think there's a note in the game talking about the dead bewilderbeast there, but you can't really see it. Anyway, the island/levels are fairly evenly structured, perfect for a review. 3 islands, 3 areas to go through. And I think it would be best to go through these chronologically as the experience builds on top of each other. So moving away from the base on Havelholm, you have the island exploration, with different stages to run through with different stuff to do in order to progress, like combat encounters, mini dragon boss fights. I think they're affected by the concoction of Dragonvine and Grimoire parasites, same ones used by Nikora, and puzzles. They vary from island to island, but for now the ones on Havelholm contain ones avoiding dragon traps, like the spear launchers. It starts when you press on the pressure plate. I like that they use a little games design trick here by forcibly making the player accidentally hit the pressure plate, so by the time you encounter another one, for a different puzzle for example, you would instinctively know what to do. And you have to freeze the water to walk across using Patch's firepower, like I said before. There are some extra optional features that are present throughout the game, like smashing boxes and bushes for resources, freeing caged dragons, though that is introduced in the next section, and opening chests for resources and stuff. In the ruins sections, you do get legendary chests, which give an extra heart. But speaking of ruins, these are the next section, which breaks up the scenery and gives a different group of main puzzles, like pushing blocks onto pressure plates, and various puzzles involving switches and spike traps and pressure plates. You know, this works fine as a main gameplay loop. Little easy puzzles to do, but after a while it does get quite boring and tedious. They rarely introduce anything new, just slight variations on the same stuff. Like the ice effect, which makes the blocks slippy and slide instead of just move a tile. And then there's the heated blocks, where you need to cool them down and have a limited time to move them. It gets old fast. The combat encounters are always fun, but still gets a little tedious towards the end. The variety of enemy types as you play are cool and keeps things interesting, like the shielded or armored trappers, ninjas, groups of hobgoblins affected by the orbs. Sometimes it encourages different strategies. For the dragons, it's good to get a quick swing in, but for the armored trappers, Patch's fire powers are quite useful, especially if you can get an effect on them. The ninjas are just really annoying, they keep them running away. Come back here! But also in the ruin sections, sometimes you get tidbits of lore, like the letters between Era, and a guy called G, who have seemed to betray her. Interesting. But after the ruin sections, you go into a boss fight, where you confront her and whatever dragon is affected by the substances. The first one is the Hot Purple, where you need Patch to stand on the pressure plate to activate the stone pillars, for then Scribbler to lure the charging dragon into it. Era comes out. Is it Era or Era? I've forgotten already. For context, I just paused the recording for like an hour to rest my voice, and I've already forgotten how to pronounce the name. This is the 3rd time now. I need to Google this. It's Air. Okay. Air comes out the woodworks and attacks. Rinse and repeat 3 times. After that, Patch ages into Broadwing, so you can fly on him. We'll get back to that later. But this does mean you can progress to the next island for the story, Volker's Mountain. For this island section, it introduces the electric pillars, where you need to get Patch to shoot them with his electric blast. This puzzle really got tiresome after a while. The mechanical progression was fine, it gets a bit more complicated towards the end, but it's not stimulating, because you figure out the pattern and then you do the task with your mind turned off. You just have to sit there for 2 seconds, figure it out and move on, and you have to do that like 10 times. I don't know what the actual number is. Though I do have to admit, this is the only time we revisit Volker's Sanctuary after the 2nd film, so seeing the progression in the world building is neat. That's cool. Excuse the pun. You get to the ruins with the aforementioned icy blocks and the other same puzzle types. I think this is where you find out that Berk is the one who built the ruins to help escape the Scourge of the Dragons. And then you get to the 2nd boss fight against the Stormcutter and Air. Come on, brain, remember. You have to shoot the electric pillars when the dragon is lined up to do damage. Ice pillars will fall from the ceiling, which you'll need to avoid when they land. And the Stormcutter will breathe fire, so you'll need to hide behind them. And then Air once again attacks. Perhaps with an updated moveset, I think she starts lobbing potions at you. The ice pillar and the fire breathing happens twice, and you have to fight Air like 3 times. Again. You can start to see a pattern with the very repetitive and scripted fights. There is little freedom in how you want to tackle boss fights, which is honestly quite an old game design philosophy at this point, but it doesn't mean it's inherently bad. The last island is Bloodbearer. Bearer? I can't pronounce these names. This introduces a thick fog to clear, but be careful, there are holes in the ground. And Dragonvine, which is interesting lore? For those who don't know, Dragonvine Island is literally on the opposite side of the archipelago for where this island would be, so how did it get here? But you just hit it and you just move past it. It hardly counts as an obstacle, and it's quite annoying. It does damage to you if you run into it, and that's about it. Once at the ruins, there are the new fire blocks, and the other types you've learned to pass for your journey, with a slow build up to the final boss section. I don't think that sentence made sense. A two-stage boss fight against the Crimson Gorgutter and the final showdown with Air. The Gorgutter section is pretty cool. You have to hammer the blocks into place to run down a specific alleyway, which trying to figure out a small puzzle whilst being under attack is hectic and thrilling. And very nice. Once you reach the end, hoping you avoid the fireballs, you shoot the electric pillars with Patch and smash the orbs, doing this each time for the 2 legs and then the head. This frees the Gorgutter, getting you to phase 2. You fight Air similar to how you've done before, with each of the rounds ending to avoid projectiles or falling rocks. Again, you have to do this 3 times to complete it, and Air ends up falling into lava, presumably dying. So, yippee! There are more islands to go to. These tend to have one thing to do on them, with you getting a unique reward at the end, which I'll quickly list off now. Timberjack Hollow doesn't contain any timberjacks. Sad face. But it's an arena where you fight waves of enemies, unlocking the Summoned Deadly Nada support. Odin's Oblivion, awesome name for an island, is ruin themed, which is just more ruin-like puzzles we've seen before, containing the Sea Shocker Blade at the end, enabling you to craft the upgraded Paralyzing Axe. Malahalla Island is ice themed, needing to complete more of those darn electric puzzles to get the Snow Wraith Tooth, allowing you to craft the Frost Blade. Glacier Island, as you can guess, is another ice-themed one, and is actually on Hiccup's map, with you once again fighting waves against enemies, unlocking the Summon Skrill support. Wild Weeds Woods is another combat island, unlocking the Hobgobbler support. And Bitterthorn Brig. It contains Dragonvine, Fog, the electric pillar puzzles, with some combat mixed in, so you can get the Eruptodon scale for the hammer. This one I remember taking a while, and because I did this right at the end, I was exhausted. I wanted the puzzles to end. It wasn't even worth it because I don't use the hammer. I should mention, to get to these islands there is a little flying mechanic, which honestly I really enjoyed. The flying itself is clunky, especially for PC controls. I think the turning radius was quite small, and the standard flying without momentum is quite slow. I also think the up and down is reversed, which I never liked. But this does remind me of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Latios or Latias soaring, and it's so cool having a map of the world below you. To get to the area that you want to go to, you have to physically fly there, much like the riders would have had to do. Personally, I would have wanted this in School of Dragons, and you can integrate sort of flying minigames you can do in between the places. That'd be cool. Perhaps something like that was initially intended, as you can do dodge rolls in the air, but there is no such thing, and thus this mechanic is completely useless, other than it looking kinda cool. The miniature islands I do quite like, and it's cool to see the dragons you've rescued on your journey flying around the island. There is a map so you can see where you are going, but this is more of an aesthetic compliment, as the execution is not the best. But yeah, it works, it's fun. Having story elements integrated is also cool. Like, I loved the bit at the end when Patch is dying. You can really feel the slow, staggered flying home, and it was heartbreaking to experience. One thing I have neglected to mention is the art style, which is kind of stupid of me talking about it at the end, but whatever. I personally find it quite charming. It has a toy-like adventuring feel, and the chippiness, well, at times looks extremely goofy. Just don't look at Stormfly's head, it's bigger than the body. For this one entry, I don't mind. It makes it have a clear identity compared to the rest of the franchise, and it's nice to see stylized variations between the different media, as it could get quite stagnant, but I wouldn't want to see this in much else. I would place this game in A tier. Whilst I really enjoyed my time with it, having elements that I personally quite like in How to Train Dragon games, but for a dream How to Train Dragon game, it's kind of far from what we want. Perhaps some of the combat mechanics could be integrated and expanded upon for this theoretical game we're making, but the tediousness and the short playtime makes me bring it down from S tier. But before we move on, let's quickly number the summoned support dragons, because at this point, having a numbered list at the end of the review is just a ritual. You know, there's only 5, so it'll be quick. Number 5 is the Hobgobbler. All it does is just drop you resources and does no damage to any of the enemies. Off to a great start. Number 4 is the Deadly Nadder. Despite hitting many targets, it doesn't seem to do all that much damage, and because poison isn't really an effect in this game, it doesn't really do much else. Number 3 is the Hot Burple. It does decent damage, and the explosions are also quite large, but it seems to struggle to hit the targets if they're moving quite fast. It's a slow volley. Number 2 is the Stormcutter. Despite the firepower being very quick, it does do quite a lot of damage, and it seems to be pretty precise, except for that one time it went for an enemy off screen. Nice. And number 1 is the Skrill. It's fast, it hits the targets quite regularly, and it does decent damage. It also gives off a paralyzing effect to any survivors, which just helps you mow down the rest. The perfect one. I'm surprised none of the others give any other effects. Maybe one of them burns the enemies, but I didn't see that. So that was the Dawn of New Riders stream, and it went well. I liked it. It was fun. The game was actually a bit better than I was expecting. The story at the end, you know, kind of got me a bit. I rejuvenated a bit. I was a lot more energetic in the beginning of the stream, but then I burned the candle very quickly, and I got quite tired towards the end. I'm not a streamer, but luckily there's only a few more days or one day left of the challenge, so we'll be fine. Look at the Sammy! Isn't he amazing in the dark? You think I've forgotten? You think I've forgotten, haven't you? No! There's still a whole genre, a whole market to explore! All the Dragon mobile games! Dragon's Pets. Facebook used to have a game marketplace, and on there was an exclusive Dragon game. You have access to the Gronkle, Nadder, Nightmare, and each of the Nightlights. Except for Rough Runner. Where's my son? Where you can pet, feed them, and improve their happiness and stamina in order to level them from the presumable adventures that you look like you can go on. What they look like, I have no idea. I can't find any footage of it. Flight of the Night Fury. You fly around different maps and collect things with really janky controls. Though this is the first reference to Dark Deep. This game released in 2010, by the way. How to Train Your Dragon, the mobile game. I love the aesthetic. It's kind of looking like Stardew Valley. You know, love pixel art. But the narrative loosely follows the film. After shooting down Toothless, you need to find him and then tame him. You have to navigate through the environment, go through various puzzles, combat encounters with plants, collecting food to increase your heart, to then team up with Toothless to fight and defeat the end boss, the Red Death. Kind of a weird like action RPG kind of thing, but the looks of it, the game looks like it's about an hour long. How to Train Your Dragon widget. This is very similar to the Dragon Pets I just mentioned before, but there are 6 eggs you can interact with. You can help them hatch, and apparently you can interact with them even afterwards, but once the dragon is satisfied, you can move on to the next one. This was the first, and for the longest time, the only version of the Night Fury egg we've ever seen, though in recent years we have seen it in other media. Tap, Drag and Drop. This is an Apple exclusive. The goal is to get the sheep back into the pens using different abilities, like burning the trees. This just looks like an unimportant puzzle game, needing to figure out what are the correct order of events. Dragon's Adventure. This is the only evidence I could see of this game even existing. I can't even see anything else online. I'm not even too sure what the gameplay involves, so I'm just going to skip it. Dragon's AR. This is an augmented reality app. The presentation of this is quite self-explanatory, just how to train dragon characters in the real world. Though this isn't really a game, so we're probably just going to ignore it. How to Train Dragon 2 Storybook app. Here you can have an audiobook version of the movie, which is stupid, just watch the movie at this point. You have a point and color, Dragon Racing, and Dragon Hunters, which are all very similar to some of the browser games we've seen before. But this one costs money. I think there are others, but it's practically the same product, so who cares? And lastly for now, DreamWorks Press Dragons. This is an interactive storybook releasing exclusively on Apple devices. Unfortunately, I don't think you can play it now, which is a shame because the story is somewhat canon. You're a castaway Viking, sinking into the deep blue, with Hiccup flying on Toothless to save you. You forgot your name and you're also carrying a mysterious egg. With it looking like it's going to hatch, Hiccup invites you back to Berk, where you put the egg in the Grobber's Forge to help it hatch, in which it does. but it's missing. You follow the sounds and you meet some riders along the way for their shenanigans. The story inconsistency is that Astrid is preparing for Dagger to attack Berk, which we know by now in this timeline, Dagger's been redeemed. You finally get to the grotto, where Hiccup brings out the return wing, which is basically just a boomerang, and this is to show the dragon that is fine to come out. It turns out to be a baby change-wing, which you bond with. There were plans to make more, but they were eventually scrapped, and the cast was fully voice acted by their OG voice actors. This takes place just before How to Train Your Dragon 2, and there are a couple of references to the events across different media, like in the exclusive story for Facebook, where the young Viking and Changewing was mentioned. The Return Wing has been seen in the possession of Erit in the Dragonvine graphic novel, and in Berk and Beyond, Hiccup mentions that he briefly gave the map to a kid with a Changewing hatchling. So yeah, this one sounds pretty cool. Just an FYI, I did use the help of the wiki and this video again. For Rise of Berk and the Titans Uprising, I will go into more details a bit later, but for now, another F tier. They're just not that great, are they? Most of them are shut down at this point. And maybe we'll put the DreamWorks press into C, as it has some connections to other material, but everything is entirely skippable. Which brings me on to the tying game with the 9 Realms. DreamWorks Dragons Legends of the Nine Realms released in 2022, around the same time as the initial publishing of Dragons the Nine Realms series. And I'll be honest, I may not go as in depth as I have with the other games, because this one is the least consequential. This game is based on the series, whereupon the basic story of the first couple of seasons is lifted into this. Thunder is looking for his Nightlight family, and along the way he meets his friends, for the ultimate goal to defeat his rival, the Titan Winged Skrill. Seemingly, as this game was being produced, the writers of the original show probably didn't know the direction of the rest of the story, or at least didn't tell the game creators, as the ending is drastically different. Though I suppose if it was identical, it would be spoilers for the show. Interestingly, there are no humans in this, apart from Tom acting as the narrator.
There are all kinds of different dragons in this hidden world.
Ah, is there?
And sometimes, they don't play nice.
So you're just the dragons. This comes under the hack and slash genre of games, wherein you fight against other dragons. Now in the first game we looked at in this video, I said this went against the branding of the franchise nowadays, which does remain true, but for the 9 Realms, it could probably get away with it, because it's a sequel series, this can have different theming, and dragons fighting other dragons in the wild, especially over territorial disputes, seems to justify it in my opinion. The game is also short, with me completing the story by roughly 5 hours. However, there is post-game optional endings for each of the stages, which I didn't do. So to 100% complete this, I'd say maybe take 10 hours. You have your standard moving around, and toggle button to start flying. This is mainly for the gaps in the ground. It allows some verticality as well in the combat, which I quite like, though it can be hard to judge the distance of where they are because of the isometric camera angle. But the verticality allows some interesting navigation throughout the different stages, which is slightly different and interesting, utilising a very common dragon element to its fullest. Or maybe not fullest, just, well. You have your standard light attacks, which are quick, deal less damage, but are easier to complete the combo. Heavy attacks are slower and deal more damage. They can breathe their firepower, which is just a ranged attack. You can also hold this down, which takes longer and deals more damage. And you have access to a dodge, which is your typical move quickly and have invisibility frames. As you progress through the game, you unlock the other dragons, whom have different attacks and ultimately act as extra HP bars. Like if Thunder faints, just switch to another dragon until he recovers. I found that a little silly because this made the game easier as it went along. Also, as you progress through the game, you can unlock more attacks, combos, and stat upgrades on the skill tree. This is very standard in many video games, and functions well in this. There isn't much to comment on as it isn't holistically unique, but I guess it's kinda unique for a dragon game. To get said upgrades, you need to spend the in-game currency, the gems. You collect them by completing the levels and the elemental rocks. Your elemental rocks are the ones that can only be broken via the attack of the dragon's element. Basically, Thunder has electric, Plowhorn has fire, Will and Way have fire and ice, and Feathers has sound, which mostly makes sense. The element corresponds to the type of fire that they breathe as dragons. And also this adds to additional puzzles, though it's extremely basic as you just need to switch between the dragons. My main criticism is that because Will and Way are both fire and ice, it makes Plowhorn effectively useless. I feel like they should have given her a unique element, though I'm not sure what that would be as her fire type is just a gooey fire, though ironically I did use Plowhorn the most as I did find her the most effective in combat. The elements also comes into effect whilst fighting enemy dragons. Different dragons have different weaknesses, resistances, and some even heal from it, being quite intuitive with the respective dragon species. Squirrels, because they can absorb lightning, resist that element. Eruptodons bathing lava, so they heal from the fire. Snow wraiths are ice dragons, so fire would be most effective. Sound is the only element that doesn't seem as intuitive, but yeah, it's cool. The worlds are split up into 5, not in 9 as the title suggests, with each having 5 stages within them. 3 of the 5 are practically the same, but vary on puzzles and roadblocks that you'll need to overcome. One of the stages tend to be a gimmicky one, like having an auto-scrolling event, dodging the cave as it's collapsing in on itself, or get to the end before the lava rises to the top. But the last one ending with a boss fight. The dragons that appear are some from the show, and surprising comebacks that didn't even make it into the series. The mechanics build on top of each other, similar to Dawn of New Riders, so once again I'll go through it chronologically. Starting with the Bio Realm. Some puzzles involves a trigger crystal, which in order to break this roadblock, you need to hit essentially a crystal shaped switch. Cave wings act as a grounding force, so to avoid that you'll need to land on the ground. Or it can act as a thing that you need to activate to get to the next section. And of course the main gameplay loop is the combat area. It's just waves of the enemies that spawn in to defeat and move on. This is similar to Dawn's, but I prefer that version as the enemies are already there, and it's like Scribbler and Patch just stumble upon them, rather than the dragon arena spawning, and here it's just dragons entering and leave corresponding to the big number at the top of the screen. These events appear the most, as it's the meat of the gameplay. So enjoy spamming buttons to defeat the enemy dragon. You ended with a boss fight against the Vault Ripper. And this one was challenging, well compared to the rest of them it is, though it's still easy. The challenge comes in with the fact that I actually need to think about the attacks. Because you only have one dragon and very little upgrades, the damage dealt to you is quite significant, and you don't have easy healing. But yeah, the Vault Ripper has kind of 2 phases. She has like big swings, which have a bit of a sound cue, so you can just time your dodges, which are always fun. She also breathes fire and has falling rocks from the sky, which again is sort of easy to avoid, and you have the opportunity to attack. One of the phases though is that she goes to her nest to heal, so you need to act very quickly before she heals back all of her HP. Once you got it though, it's pretty easy and you can move on. Next is the Ice Realm. The realm introduces the Ice Rock, which can only be broken with the fire elemental attacks, spikes on the floor, so you'll have to fly over them, and a heated trigger crystal, similar to before, but it needs the fire elemental attacks to turn off the cold cave winds, which hurt you. There's these moving platforms as well, which feels really contrived. They just force the flying reptile to not do that. And you have to sit there and wait. Like, come on, I just want to beat up dragons. Once you reach the end though, you are fighting the Screaming Death? Yeah, that's an interesting one to come back. But in this boss fight, you have to maintain the heat crystals, like keep them turned on all the time, so you can fly up and then hit the dragon. But it's not too bad if you maintain an even pace. Try not to get too greedy with the attacks. And by now you have Plowhorns, so you have quick healing when you switch between the dragons, so you can be a little bit more reckless. The Fire Realm introduces very little. There's the fire events, which are simple to avoid, though they do reach you if you're flying, and also the ice trigger crystals. They just need to be hit with an ice attack to cool down a section of lava. There's also black smog above it, so you can't just simply fly over it. But the general difficulty seems to take a step up here, especially with the Eruptodons acting as like mini bosses. The end boss fight is a catastrophic Quaken. This one was very simple. Having Wu Wei be super effective against it just practically speed ran the boss. Lava does come up from the ground and the black smog does appear over it, making you having to think about where you're moving, and the dragon does heal from the lava, but if you attack quick enough, it'll be over very quickly. I barely saw the dragon's attack pattern. I think they just mainly roll across the arena, which is just easy to dodge. Heading into the Dark Realm. The new crystal is the Sonic Crystal.
Whoa, Tails! What are you doing there, Shadow?
Kiss me, Sonic. When it's in effect, it buffs the enemies. Sorry, you probably need a sec to process what just happened. I am so sorry. I think I've just gone insane editing this video. When it's in effect, it buffs the enemies, which to be honest, I kinda just ignored. It added a nice extra challenge, to be honest. Oh my god. My mum watches these videos. Hi, Mum. They also introduced a new toxic gas, which is just like the spikes again. I just kinda ignored it. There are the trigger crystals that reveal a darkened area, but at this point it's just busy work. To progress the game, you just have to hit the crystal again. It's the same thing over and over again. But interestingly, you are fighting a lot of the previous dragons you fought from all the previous realms. Sentence. But it's because they are under the effect of the death song. It's nice as it forces you to swap between the dragons quite frequently. So yeah, the death song is the end boss. You have sort of the phase where you can hit the death song, and then it calls for backup, where to move on to the next phase, you need to hit the sonic crystal. And I think there's 2 times it could do this. It could spawn in the skrills, and then the second one is spawns in the death grippers. So there's more enemies to attack, with different variations on its resistances, though I still did defeat it as fast as I did for the catastrophic Waken. So I don't know why these bosses are getting easier as they're going along. Next is the King's Realm. The crystals here create a shockwave when you hit it, with a corresponding elemental attack, causing damage to everyone. But it's also used in puzzles to activate the trigger crystal, though it's still essentially the same thing. It's just hitting the trigger, but it just has extra steps now, and it takes forever. Come on. I want to move on. Mind you, this area gives off a lot of money. But anyway, at the end is the Titan Wind Skrill that the whole game is leading up to. You first get the opportunity to hit the dragon with a very easy moveset. I didn't really pay attention to it. It goes to the crystal, which it does start healing, so you need to rapidly attack said crystal. The Skrill itself has invis frames, so yeah, you really do need to act quickly. Which then precedes a volley of attacks to avoid, which was... Oh, to be honest, at this point I just took the hit. The boss fight wasn't hard. And that's the game. Yay! I guess I should go into a little bit more detail in how I found the individual dragons. I guess this could be the ranking. Is it a different spot? But whatever. Feathers was a personal highlight, especially in the cutscenes, though I did use her the least. I do like that her basic attack does incapacitate the dragons that she's fighting against, but because her vibe is more evasive and priority is not to get hit, she does mean that she does feel a lot weaker compared to the others. Then it's Wu and Wei. They have strong attacks that I very much like, especially with the ice wall, but they are also glass cannons, so the fun doesn't tend to last very long. Thunder is next, a weaker attacker compared to Wu and Wei and Plowhorn, but they're fast and they have good abilities. They seem pretty standard, and you can never really go wrong with them. They're still quite enjoyable to play as them. And my favourite was Plowhorn. She was beefy, hits hard.
I'm going to call her Greta, after my first love.
Most of the time I could just spam the heavy attacks 3 times, and the opposing dragon would flee. And I love the nuke from the sky. It's just a dive bomb, quite literally. Each stage has an alternate ending, usually requiring an element of a dragon that you haven't unlocked yet, which acts as an artificial way to increase the playtime. You just replay the same levels and just deviate slightly. It's just 90% of the game again. You also unlock challenge mode after getting every beacon. This is just a really hard version of the game, and once more you're just replaying the same levels for the 3rd time in a row now. Though it is nice to have more of a challenging version of it, for maybe some of the more hardcore gamers, though I doubt any hardcore gamers would be playing this. But from that you can unlock skins for your dragons. They look ugly! What the? And it's really not worth the effort, because as soon as you unlock the skins, you're not touching the game again. In terms of lore, there is very little to go on. It perhaps gives more dragon species a home for the different realms, like the Whispering Death is in the Fire Realm, the Flightmare is in the Dark Realm, you know, dragons that we didn't see in the main series. But unfortunately, not all the realms line up with the ones within the show, and a lot of dragon species have inconsistencies, with some having the wrong firepower. Plus, the story is very different, and Thunder's family is, let's just say better designed. This whole thing is essentially non-canon material to a show that can still be ignored when looking at the original How to Train Dragon timeline, as it's set so far in the future. However, the only really cool thing that came out of this is a physical booklet called Dragons the New Age. It actually provides a little bit of lore to the Great Dragon Migration at the end of the 3rd movie, known as The Homecoming, and it has come in useful adding in like sprinklings of information for different dragon species, like the Fault Ripper actually eating rocks and gems, which was information that we neither saw or told in anything else. As a game, it's perfectly functional, it's fun, I have nothing really against it, but if we want to draw upon different mechanics for our dream How to Train Dragon game, this has nothing. So, C tier. Also, I lost the footage for the wrap up of day 6, so I'm just gonna move on to the next game review, The Rise of Berk. It released in 2014, around the same time as the second movie, and as with all the games, this one feels the least important to cover, not because it's bad or anything, it's just because if you're a Dragons fan, especially this far into this video, chances are that you've already played the game. But being an idle game, this does have a completely different approach compared to most games that give you a dedicated experience, whereas this is designed for you to play for a couple of hours every day. Basically, you collect both fish, wood, and then eventually iron to level up your dragons that you're collecting. Build and upgrade the buildings, and upgrade the trading academy and your storage, yada yada yada. You get dragons through card packs, and sending Toothless on his journeys. There's also like daily login rewards and stuff like that. Over time you can also unlock legendary dragons, which most of them are just the alpha dragons. The early ones give you more of a selection of dragons to collect, and the resources do help collect said dragons. There are season collections, which give you rewards for doing daily, weekly and monthly tasks, getting you decorations for your Berk, or more dragons, especially the seasonal exclusives. Some of the more interesting game modes are Brawl. Teams of 3 dragons fight each other. The goal is to get token packs to level up your dragons further, specifically for this game mode. Come to think about it though, it is kind of a circular system. It doesn't really aid you in the main goal of collecting as many dragons as possible. Defend allows you to send off any of your dragons to defeat the Dragon Hunter ships, whom are attacking Berk. From this you can get resources to help unlock the Defend dragons, though you can mostly get the resources that you need from like daily packs, so it's a little redundant, but personally it gives you an opportunity to see some dragons' firepower, which otherwise hasn't been seen nor described. Albeit they're kind of vague and present some inconsistencies with some dragons. There are more little mechanics here and there, but to be honest the ultimate goal is to collect as many dragons as you can. The worst part of the game are the microtransactions, but this is just a very typical mobile gaming market thing, unfortunately, with prices that are ridiculous. Like £50 for a card pack, for a chance for one of the out of almost 1,000 dragons. Are you kidding me? I might as well get a whole new game at this point. It also does incentivize you to take these deals, as to progress through the game, it is padded to the most absurd. I'm like 3 or 4 years into my personal world, and I'm only now just unlocking the 4th legendary, out of like 12. Or you know, you could just cough up 90 quid for one. I am level 100 out of like 140? I think that's the max. I did have another world like 10 years ago. I remember like doing it daily whilst I was going to school, but I lost that save a long time ago. You can ignore all the offers though, as none of it is really mandatory. All it does is just save you time. By now I have a routine with this. It's quite enjoyable. Like I open it up in the morning whilst like watching YouTube in bed to sort of get ready for the day, and then once more at night to unwind. But if I am to be honest, I don't think I would be playing it if it wasn't needed for my job, which is a bizarre thing. Which does bring me on to the absolute best thing about this game, the lore. You have small things like giving some Viking events a month, which helps me with like the timeline of the whole franchise, to give them information about the most obscure dragons that would have little to no information on them. It gives individuals or even whole species personalities and motifs. Heck, they went as far as adding dragons that for 12 years never got named or classed. So for the big nerds of this franchise, it's awesome that we have this level of detail, which we won't get in anything else. So just for that, I'm putting it in B. So let's check back on how much progress I made in a week, which wasn't that much. But I managed to get a level 14 Toothless and have 20 Vikings on my Berk, got on a rare triple strike, and just unlocked the new area of the Old Forest. Though for this little last stint I did save up some full fest points to get a couple of packs, and we managed to get quite lucky. You know, we got the Mudraker and this exclusive Flame Whipper, which was quite cool. These rare dragons are pretty good collectors, so you know, pretty decent initial progress I would say. But I do have to admit, this game gets slower the longer you play, so I think it's just best to leave it here. I haven't really got much else to say. Yeah. And then we have the other most prominent mobile game, Titians Uprising, releasing in 2019 alongside the third movie. This is another one that you are meant to play for a couple of hours a day, and I have to say, my dopamine lacking brain actually finds this useful. Like, it gives me enough energy to get out of bed. Look, don't judge me. I'm doing what I can to survive. But yeah, this game is just essentially Candy Crush. Swap the gems to get 3 in a row to launch attacks at the enemy dragons. There are combinations like 4 in a row, allowing you to clear the row upon activation, depending on the direction you got it in. And in any other combination of 3s, like in an L shape or a star shape, it'll turn into a star gem and pop that star shape area. Additionally, if you get 5 in a row, you get a super ultra mega gem, which clears all gems of the same colour on the board. Wow! However, there is more to the gameplay. Every time you match a gem of a certain colour, the corresponding coloured dragon's ability gauge increases. Do this enough time and then you can activate their ability, which ranges wildly between each dragon. Some good, some awful, and of course, the higher the star, typically the better the ability. There is a method to this, but I don't know what it is, and I'm sure there are other creators to follow if you want to know the details. But it does add more levels of why did I give myself this word? But it does add more levels of intricacies and reasons to collect the various dragons. And yeah, there are quite a few, but we are missing a lot at the same time, which for reasons I'll get into later is a massive disappointment. But to level up the dragons, you'll need to sacrifice the sort of other dragons that you're collecting. You can collect coins and fish from the stations, which generate resources over time, or through quest rewards, either going through like the main story or this little like tab. I don't know what you call that. In there are like events like earning trust points for specific dragon riders or holiday versions of them, and you can get the daily scales which cycle weekly, which is another resource that you'll need to like level up your dragons and to hatch eggs in the hatchery. But most of this is just busy work, but you know, it's something I guess. There is also an arena where you can fight against other players' teams, not the player themselves, just the team that you put in to defend Berk, which they do circle around your island as well, which is quite cool to see. I like it. But this earns you medals for you to spend on either trust points, EXP sheep to sacrifice, or other resources. I mainly use this game mode to complete the tasks to get extra energy, as you only have like a capped amount. I should also mention this does also have like a premium currency system in runes, very similar to the Rise of Berk, where you can spend it on resources. But the microtransactions in this game isn't too bad. There is a subscription service, but that too is in Rise of Berk. Though this does have like a gacha gimmick where you spend the runes and, you know, you may get the dragon you want or a bajillion dragons that you don't want. Run out of runes? Well, you could always buy more. Softcore gambling. You know, for the kids. I should say though, there is a narrative to the game, bringing in more stories between the second and third movie with the new Dragon Root Company. It sort of delves into what happened after the Dragon Hunters, after it was run by Vigo. But this also has ties in with the hybrid dragons, as they were introduced here initially, and then eventually was spread to the other games, in which context could be found in why they exist. In my personal save of this game, I'm trying to collect one of every dragon, as once they are in your roster, you can get the lore. And the lore in this game, oh boy, is juicy! For some reason in this game, there is a whole like novels about individual dragons and random in-depth information about like the societies in the archipelago, or even like other countries, which is like incredible because we like know very little and it's like no information about it, like, or very little. Yeah, this is like a personal love and the most like we have ever gotten in like any game, which I will share with you in time over a course of videos. But for now, the gameplay does bring it down, as it's just the same thing the whole time, so I'm just going to pop it into B alongside Rise of Berk. But after the week, I managed to get to level 13, unlocking all the stations except for the breeding one. My team consists of almost all of them being 3 stars, I just need a 3-star green, but I managed to get to stage 22, ending this little play session fighting the Bewilderbeast. Volkers to be precise, I don't know why we're fighting it. Anyway, so honestly, not that much progress. I think it really starts to get going once you get Toothless, as it is the first 5-star dragon you can easily obtain, and it provides a big power boost. But yeah, let's move on to the last game in this video. How to Train Your Dragon, The Journey. There's going to be a lot of context needed to be established, so please be patient. But this is a mobile game, released on the 2nd of August 2024 exclusively on Bilibili. Which, a couple of things. First of all, why 2024? Sort of an odd year to make this, especially as it hasn't got any ties to the live action remake. If anything, they're using a lot of How to Train Dragon 2's iconography. And for those who don't know, Bilibili, I think, is a China exclusive social media app. I mean, we can access it, but it's all in a different language. It's like a mixture of YouTube and the Play Store, and as someone who only speaks English, it is hard for me to navigate the site, so please forgive me if I do get anything wrong. But yeah, an officially licensed How to Train Dragon game was made there. They even got Chris Sanders, one of the OG directors, to promote it.
I can't wait to see more people become dragon riders, rebuild the Isle of Berk, and embark on thrilling adventures.
And also wild robots.
Also, my new movie, The Wild Robot, will...
I should also apologise for the quality of the videos. For some bizarre reason, if you're not logged in, you can only view it at like 480p, and I don't particularly want to create an account just to get a few minutes of footage for this like one video. I doubt that I'm ever really gonna talk about this ever again. So yeah, the loss of quality is me, not you. Don't worry about that. But the build up to the game was like awesome. They made a bunch of CGI trailers, which myself and My 4 Phases reposted to help get attention on it. It was like almost an hour-long talk with the developers. No idea what the actual content of the video is, but the set looks awesome. I would have loved to see a Western release of it, and I'm surprised they didn't. There has been other games that's gotten that treatment, but considering How to Train Your Dragon does have a very large Western audience, I think this was just a massive missed opportunity. And since like February of 2025, the updates have been like slowed or non-existent. I think it's kind of already in maintenance mode, although I do have no idea if that's a bad thing or just a normal thing. Game developers across the world could have totally different approaches to their products. Like a little bit of speculation, I could totally see an example where the developers were focused on making the game mostly complete, maybe having some touch up and maintenance on the servers over time, but the core content of the game is already done and packaged and they move on. But whereas some game developers, especially for mobile games, they continuously like update it and adding extra and new content over like years and years and years. What is very cool about this though, is that they did add a few new dragons. I have been wanting to make a video on them all, but I've been waiting to get more information. I have it very stuck in my head that like, I need all the information I can gather in one concise video. But in order to do that, I've been waiting on more information because some of it is locked behind in-game progress. And because of shenanigans, which we'll get into in a bit, I'm having to rely a lot on other people. I no longer have access to the game, so it may or may not happen. But the new designs do look pretty cool though. You even like tried to hack the game and couldn't access the information. Though we did get this like cool like look at the Purple Death. Dude really has no back legs, huh? Also, I did say we, but I actually haven't really partook in any of this. But we do know that the information is there. Oh, and there's the additional issue of needing it to be translated. But yeah, in terms of canonicity, this is equal to any of the other mobile games. However, I am going to be ignoring the contents and the lore of this game for my future videos because of the inaccessibility of it. To have an account on the game, you need to have a Chinese number, which I obviously don't have. How we managed to play it initially was all thanks to My 4 Phases, an absolute goat, so please go and subscribe to him. I think he's still now, after like 2 years, like chipping away at the game. But yeah, shenanigans were at play, and I don't know if it was fully legal or not, so let's just leave it at that. But ultimately, because we as a community can't really gather much information on it, unfortunately we're gonna have to pretend that it doesn't exist. But please, genuinely, anyone who can have like easy access to this, please join my Discord and share all the information that you can get, but no pressure of course. So yeah, let's move on to the actual game, shall we? What does this mysterious title hold? A turn-based role-playing gacha game. It's literally Raid Shadow Legends, but for How to Train Your Dragon. What the fuck? There is a narrative to the game, with some cool looking villains, but I have no idea what the story is. I don't know, they kind of seem related to the Dragon Root Company, but they could easily be something completely made up. It wouldn't surprise me if they are, but that is literally all I can say on it. It's just, the villains look cool. I don't know their motivations, nothing. Well, to be honest, I could have an educated guess. And the gameplay itself is very similar to like a lot of things we've already covered, to be honest. You have your main Isle of Berk where you build structures, collect resources using your dragons. You could have a breedery there, you could level them up. You go to like the dragon racing station, and this is where the gacha gimmick comes in. And you can collect your various rewards through doing different quests or daily logins. Oh, the microtransactions are even worse in this. Oh. But to be clear, this is around $15, which is still rip-off. There are 2 premium currency systems, red ruby gems and then like a blue ruby gem, in which they unlock different resources that you'll need. And of course, you could buy them all. There's battle passes to sign up for, or just skip that phase, and if you want that specific dragon, buy it. And in tandem with a gacha gimmick, when you have to spend 10 or so sheep, you get a chance at different dragons. But it doesn't just end there. You also have to gacha the equipment that you can attach to your dragon to upgrade them. So good luck pulling what you need. It's Genshin Impact all over again. This isn't solely unique to these games, but I'm still going to point it out and criticize it because I hate this in the gaming industry because it is incredibly predatory. Which doesn't help, as to upgrade your dragon, you need to do like a bajillion things. There's like the skills trees, and then there's like upgrading the stars. I'm not 100% sure, but the amount of like niche items that you need, you're very much relying on just money.
너의 그런 하찮은 실력으로는 날 당해낼 수가 없겠구나.
And within this, there are a couple of like mini games. I think there's like a fish mini game where you have to feed dragons. Sometimes for a stage, you're just flying a stormfly and you have to shoot down other dragons. I couldn't do that because I was on PC. There's like a taming one where you have to tame maybe an extra strong dragon. I don't know. I can't read the words. Although the presentation of this is kind of interesting, they used the dragon cards. Arguably, I would say more faithful to the presentation in the movies. A lot of people did mistake this as a card game because of this, but no, this is just the UI design. Speaking of style, I do find it quite funny that this is all in an anime style. Personally, nothing against it, love anime. I've been consuming it since being a snot-nosed little brat, so I'm always going to be fond of it. And for those who want to know what my favourite anime is, it's Free Run. Hence the use of Voltruck earlier. It makes Hiccup look even more like a twink. But yeah, this doesn't really surprise me. Like Japan, China has a very big like anime market. And honestly, it's one of those situations where it's kind of cool seeing like a franchise that I love and adore experiment with different styles for different games. And I find it quite interesting that they use a mixture of 2D and 3D assets for this. I do have to admit, the game looks pretty nice. One of my favorite aspects is just the general artwork that you see around the place. Honestly, it just looks so pretty. But you can go out and explore the world. Interestingly, this is like one of the few games that actually use Hiccup's map, meaning it's probably going to have like the most accurate locations. And it includes a couple of islands around Berk that aren't on Hiccup's normal map. I'm going to save that for another time. But yeah, I mean, this is a kind of a small pet peeve with the franchise. It's like, you know, we have the archipelago mapped out, but they just don't follow it. Anyway, sorry. But the actual main gameplay kind of has two phases. You're flying your dragon, the sort of team leader. You could pick up collectibles. I think your goal is to sort of get to the end. But you do come across combat encounters where you have your whole team versus the other team. It's all kind of automatic. My best guess to describe it is that you can activate their abilities, specific abilities each dragon has. I have even less of a clue. It's hard to play a game when you don't know the language, so I was just tapping buttons and hoping it worked, and it kind of did. Thankfully, it is kind of one of those games that just sort of play itself, which as a game is a bad thing. But for my specific scenario, it's cool. Sometimes either through just traversing through the landscape and discovering them, or after a combat encounter, you are given an item, which I think is just a temporary buff for the journey. You do also have the option to go at a camp, I believe, and maybe go to Gobble's Forge. I think you can heal your dragons or do various things. And the ultimate goal is to just get to the end of the stage. Gives you more resources and items to upgrade your dragon and to ultimately progress the story. However, I do not know how long it is. Additionally, there are boss events where you can fight against the alpha dragons. I feel like the visuals are kind of just self-explanatory. Just defeat them. I do find this weird though. Like, every dragon is connected to their normal classes, which is great, cool. But every dragon is also given an element, which means they have like super effective and like resistances when pitted against each other in a fight. And some of them, of course, make sense. A lot of the tidal dragons are sort of the water element, but some of them just don't make sense either. If they really wanted to have Pokemon type elements, why not just use the classes that they're in? Anyway. Oh, and on top of that, they even have archetypes. Like, some dragons are like the healers, some are like the strikers and the frontliners. It's so bloated with so many mechanics. Just pick one and go with that. But one of the last things I should probably mention is that they do have quite a lot of dragons in there, even a lot of the game exclusive ones, which to be honest I'm personally a bit surprised about. So there is even more possibilities of expanded lore on some of the most obscure dragons. But yeah, that's more or less everything I could gather. I'm sure I have missed some micro mechanics or purposely left out some things because it's just a bit redundant to say them. And I did have fun for what little I could understand. I don't know where to place this in the tier list. It's really hard to pass judgment on something that you haven't really explored too much. Although I did play it for 4 hours, and I probably did cover like pretty much the core of the gameplay. But to be honest, my favourite aspects of the How to Train Your Dragon games is the lore and the stories, which I couldn't get into. But what I can gather from some of the dragons I did unlock with the lore, it's not too dissimilar to what we've already gotten in other games. So honestly, the only really new content in this is the story of the villains and the new dragons, which ultimately we could kinda ignore. I don't know, I have so much beef with all this bloody gacha crap. Screw you, you're going in C tier. And finally, let's cut back to present day me for the conclusion of this video. Wait, what do you mean 3 years later? Yeah. I started this project 3 years ago, in October of 2023. It is now June of 2026, which for this conclusion has left me in a bit of an awkward state, because I am now currently faceless, for reasons which will be revealed in literally the next video. For now though, what have we learned from this experience? All the games on the list range from bad to mediocre compared to the gaming industry standard, but in terms of How to Train Your Dragon, there's quite a few gems of content that expand the wider world and lore further than ever could otherwise, and don't have a mental health crisis extending what should be a 2-month editing project into a year, and to have a dream How to Train Your Dragon game would just be create School of Dragons, but better.